Today, we're going to narrate some scary Reddit stories for you to relax or sleep to, or listen to as a podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. "16 tons. What's got you in such a sour mood, Brandon? It's payday, my veteran colleague Vincent asked, as the rusty freight elevator noisily rattled its way up towards the penthouse suite. For the past year or two, I'm honestly not sure how long it's been, actually. I've been under contract for an otherworldly masked lord who calls himself Ignacio de Incognita. He's not a demon, exactly. He's closer to Fae, I think, but I don't fully understand what he is. I never sought him out. He came to me. I asked him how he even knew who I was, and he slapped me across the face for my insolence. I still signed up, though. That's how desperate I was. He doesn't waste his time offering deals to people who can say no. He sends me and the rest of my crew out on what I can best describe as odd jobs. Half the time, hell, most of the time, I'm not even sure exactly what it is we're doing. Most of the crew have been around longer than I have, and some of them aren't human, but they all seem to have a better idea of what's going on than me. Our foreman, Vothstag, is technically the one in charge, but he's not all there in the head. The top of his cranium's been removed, and a good chunk of his brain's been scooped out. He mostly just barks guttural nonsense that none of us really understand, but somehow compels us to do what we're supposed to, even when we don't know what that is. He's a hulking hunchback with an overgrown beard, who usually wears an elk skull to cover up the hole in his head. If he was ever human, I don't think he is now. Vincent is our de facto leader, however, since he's more or less a normal guy that we can relate to. Aside from Vothstag, he's been working for Ignacio the longest. I won't bother describing what he looks like, since the rest of us wear gas masks on duty. They're partially to protect us from environmental and workplace hazards, partially to conceal our identities, but mainly to bring us more easily under Ignacio's control. That was why we're all wearing our masks on the elevator, incidentally. We were on our way to see the big boss, and our contracts made it very clear we were never to remove our masks in his presence. "Come on, Vincent. You know meetings with Iggy never go well," I replied bluntly. "Oh, it's just bluster. You know that. He's got to put the fear of God into us," Vincent claimed. "If he wasn't actually satisfied with our performance, we wouldn't still be here." "No, Brandon's right. Iggy wouldn't have called all 10 of us in just to hand us our script and call us lazy arses," Lowald chimed in. "There's 9 of us now," Klaus reminded him grimly. "Right, sorry. Hard to keep track some days," Lowald admitted. "Regardless, something's up, and the odds are pretty slim it will be something we like." I cringed as Vothstag shouted some of his garbled nonsense back towards Lowald. "Yes, I know we're not being paid to have fun, but we're not being paid at all," Klaus interrupted. "None of us are getting any real money until our contracts are up, and have any of you actually known anyone who made it to the end of their contract?" He recoiled as Vothstag spun around and began roaring at him, hot spittle flying out from beneath his mask of carved bone as he furiously waved his fist in his face. "He's right, Klaus. You're being paranoid," Vincent said in an eerily calm tone. "I've served out multiple contracts, and I've got the silver to prove it." He confidently reached into his pocket and held a troy-ounce coin of Sealy silver between his fingers. Fish and chips, the pair of 3-foot-tall somethings that work for us, immediately crowded around him and began eyeing it greedily. "That's right, boys. Take a gander. That's powerful magic right there, and you'll get one of these for every moon you've worked at the end of your contracts," he reminded us before quickly pocketing the coin away again. "Unless, of course, you do something to get your contract prematurely terminated, then you'll have nothing to show for it but a fistful of expired scrip. So keep your heads down, mouths shut, and your eyes on the prize. You'll have pockets jangling full of coins soon enough." As discreetly as I could, I slipped my hands into my pockets and rubbed my one Sealy coin for good luck. None of them knew I had it because I didn't want to explain how I got it, but that little bit of fortune it brought me had almost been enough to let me escape, once. If I could just muster up the skill to make the best use of my luck, it would be enough to get me out for good one day. The freight elevator finally came to a stop, and the doors creaked open to reveal the spacious and sumptuous penthouse of our employer. Portraits, animal heads, shields, weapons, and most of all masquerade masks covered nearly every square inch of the walls. Amidst the suits of armor and porcelain vases, there were dozens of priceless ornaments strewn throughout the room. They were incredibly tempting to steal, which was their whole point. Stealing from the boss was a violation of your contract, and you did not want to break your contract. The wide windows on the far wall offered a panoramic view of our decaying company town, nestled in a valley between sharp crimson mountains, beneath a xanthous sky twinkling with 1,000 black stars. You may have heard of such a place before. It has many names, but I will speak none of them here. Ignacio was sitting on a reclining couch in front of the fireplace, some paperwork left out on the coffee table, and a featureless mask, like a silver spiderweb, clutched in his hand. Ignacio himself always wore the top half of a golden Oni mask, which in and of itself wasn't unusual for our company. But the odd thing was that several portraits in the penthouse showed that it had once been a full mask. I've always wondered what happened to the bottom half. Aside from that, Ignacio wasn't too unusual looking. He was tall, skinny, and swarthy, with a pronounced chin, tousled dark brown hair, and always dressed in doublets of silk and velvet, like he was performing Shakespeare or something. Vothstag went into the room first, with Vincent almost, but not quite, at his side. Fish and Chips scamped after them, followed by Lowald, Klaus, and myself. The last two members of our crew are called Ham and Gristle, and they're the two I know the least about. They keep to themselves, and I don't think I've ever even seen them with their masks off. I have seen them without gloves on, though, and both of their hands are white with pink-tinged fingers. I have no idea what that means, but for some reason, I always found it oddly unsettling. The only thing I know for sure about them is that they're the only survivors of another crew that tried to run out on their contract, and I know better than to ask for details about that. Gentlemen, right on time," Ignacio greeted us as he waved us over. He positioned himself on his couch to make it impossible for any of us to sit beside him, and none of us dared to take a seat at any of the claw-footed armchairs that were meant for guests with much higher stations in life. "I've got this Moon's script books all stamped and approved. You'll notice they're a bit light, seeing as how you were slightly behind quota on this assignment." None of us objected, and none of us were particularly surprised. I was grateful that the mask hid my expression, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. I still had to make an effort to mind my body language, though. Being so accustomed to his employees and compatriots wearing masks, Ignacio was quite astute to body language. Vincent accepted the stack of 9 booklets and nodded gratefully. "We appreciate your leniency, my lord, and look forward to earning back our privileges on our next assignment," he said. "I was hoping you'd say that." Ignacio grinned as he took a sip from his crystal chalice. He set it down on the coffee table and picked up a dossier. "Halloween is fast approaching, and that means we need costumes and candy. Costumes we have in abundance, obviously, but candy's one vice I don't usually keep well stocked." "So we're actually stealing candy from babies on our next job?" Klaus asked. "Nothing so quotidian," Ignacio sneered. "Remind me, have any of you met Icky before?" The name meant nothing to me, but I glanced from side to side to see if anyone else reacted to it. I could have sworn I saw Ham and Gristle perk their heads up slightly. "She's that clown woman, right? The one in charge of that god-awful circus?" Vincent asked. "I beg your pardon? It's an enchanted circus that travels the worlds and offers sanctuary to paranormal vagabonds in need," Ignacio claimed half-heartedly. "And I might be able to pawn a few of you off on them if it comes to that, so be careful you don't fall any further behind on your quotas. But you're right. She is a clown, with a capital C, and clowns love candy. She'll be attending my All Hallows Ball this year, and I don't want her to feel excluded, so we'll need some real top-shelf candy on offer." We're still waiting for the other shoe to drop here, boss," Vincent confessed, as most of us shared nervous glances with one another. "You want us to get candy? Fancy candy? I don't get it. What's the catch?" "Oh God, we're not taking it from babies. We're serving the babies with it." Lowald balked in horror. "No, but thank you for that highball to make the actual assignment seem more reasonable," Ignacio said. "No, I'm sending you all down to the taproots of the World Tree to collect some of the crystallized sap there." The taproots of the World Tree?" Vincent repeated softly. "The physical manifestation of the metaphysical network that binds all the worlds and planes of creation, gnawed at by the not things trying to break their way into reality? You're sending us down there for sweets." Icky swears that Yggdrasil syrup pairs beautifully with French toast. He replied blithely, "This is an especially dangerous assignment, so I want you all to read that dossier in full. Emrys has been charting and forging new pathways through the plains from his spire in Adderwood, so thanks to him your trip down at least will be relatively easy." Just there and back, right? Vincent asked desperately, his voice wavering. "Just a handful of the stuff to wow Icky, and we're done, right?" A sadistic smirk slowly spread across Ignacio's face before he told us how much crystallized sap we would need to retrieve. "You mine 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older, and deeper in debt," Lobald sang as he chipped away at the pulsing amber crystal emerging from the Leviathan root. The world tree was cosmically colossal, though it's meaningless to describe its size, since I can only describe the parts of it that exist in 3 dimensions. The twin trunks of the tree snaked around each other like a double helix, each alight with an ever-shifting astral aura that perpetually waxed and waned in synchronicity with its twin. From its crown sprung a seemingly infinite mass of fractally dividing branches, shimmering with countless spherical leaves which I knew to be individual universes. The base of the tree spawned an equally infinite mass of sprawling taproots, anchoring it in place and drawing precious sustenance from the edges of reality. As dangerous as it was to be there, it was nonetheless a sublime experience. You think that looking upon all of existence like that would fill you with Lovecraftian madness at your own insignificance, but it was far more transcendental than that. On some fundamental level, I recognized that tree. It was Yggdrasil. It was the biblical tree of good and evil. It was the 2 trees of Valinor. That tree was meant to be there, and so was everything inside of it. Sure, it was functionally infinite, and everything in it was finite, but the tree wasn't merely massive. It was intricate. In the grand scheme of things, nothing inside of it was superfluous. Everything, no matter its scale, was part of the ultimate design of the tree. You and I may not be any more important than anyone or anything else, but if we weren't important, we wouldn't be here. I'm not entirely sure if any of my coworkers felt the same way, though. "St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go." Lobald continued to sing, only to be interrupted by Vothstag's irate howling, his eyes burning like coals as he dared him to finish the chorus. Lobald bowed his head contritely as he awkwardly cleared his throat. When Vothstag was satisfied, he had been cowed into silence. He turned around to resume his work. "'Cause I owe my soul to the company store," I finished for him, not too loudly, but loud enough that everyone heard me. Vothstag immediately came charging at me, roaring in fury, but I didn't flinch. I just let him chew me out for about a minute until I heard something that I was pretty sure was a question. "That's ridiculous. You're making more noise than either of us," I countered, "and wasting more time. Now, if you don't mind, I've got work to do." Vothstag sneered at me, but since I had resumed my task, his job as taskmaster was complete, and he left to attend to other matters. "What the hell are you doing, pushing your luck like that, Brandon?" Vincent whispered. "He was out of line. Even chain gangs are allowed to sing," I explained. "Besides, I'm right, aren't I? If we attract any unwanted attention, it will be because of him." "This isn't the place to cause trouble," he hissed. "Fill the carts as fast as you can so we can get out of here." When we arrived at the taproots, we saw that we weren't the first beings to try to mine this deposit of sap. Someone, likely some clan of unseelie fae, had established a fairly complex operation with rails and hand carts. As convenient as this was for us, it did, of course, pose the uncomfortable question of why the site had been completely abandoned when it was obviously far from depleted. Me, Vincent, Lobald, and Klaus were chipping away at the crystal sap, tossing what we could into a nearby trolley cart. When it was full, Ham and Gristle would haul it off so that Fish and Chips could scoop it into 20-kilogram bags, which Ham and Gristle would then stack and secure onto skids. And as always, Vothstag supervised. 16 bleedin' tons of this bilge, Vincent muttered as he took a swing at it with his pickaxe. And he's got the nerve to tell us it's just an appetizer for a party guest. What do you suppose they're going to do with it all? Refine it into proper syrup, I imagine, Lowald replied. Make it into sweets and sodas, or just drizzle some of it straight onto flapjacks. Either way, they'll make a killing. 16 tons will probably sell for millions. Why though? Is it just exotic sugar? I asked. What do you think? Lowald asked rhetorically, gesturing at the source. For reality benders, anything from the edges of reality is potent stuff. They put a lump of this in their morning coffee, and the veil will seem as weak to them as it is here. There's no telling what havoc they'll get up to, so you better hope we're not around to see. Now you're just being ridiculous. Clowns don't drink coffee, Vincent joked. I was about to ask him how he would know, when Vothstag put his hand on my shoulder and spun me around. Ham and Gristle had returned with the empty cart, but only Gristle was getting ready to pull the full one. Vothstag spewed some of his usual gibberish, gesturing at me and then towards Ham's empty space at the cart. Because I sang one line? Seriously? I asked. I was about to throw Lowald under the bus for singing in the first place, but Vothstag was already roaring incomprehensibly. All right, I'll pull the damn cart. I handed my pickaxe over to Ham, who instantly began swinging at the sap with manic enthusiasm. Gristle gave me a slight nod of condolence before Vothstag yoked me up to the cart like an ox, and then sent us on our way with an angry shout. If you don't mind me asking, how come Ham deserves a break and you don't? I asked Gristle as we made our way down the track, the dinging of our colleagues' pickaxes slowly fading into the background. Gristle looked over his shoulder to confirm the Vothstag was well out of earshot and then turned his head towards mine. Vincent's wrong, he said in a soft, conspiratorial whisper. I'm Story? I asked. About clowns and coffee, he clarified. Icky drinks coffee. I've seen her do it. She takes it with double cream and sugar to keep it clown kosher, of course. She's a little too classy to indulge in stereotypical candy binges, but she's still got a sweet tooth like the rest of us. Us? I asked uneasily. Gristle nodded, lifting up his gas mask by the filter and revealing his face to me for the first time. His poreless skin was a lustrous white, but his lips, nose, and the space around his eyes were all pitch black, and the eyes themselves sparkled with the light of 1,000 dying stars. His mouth was spread into an unnaturally wide smile, revealing that his teeth were not only perfect, but shiny to the point that I could see myself in them. And I looked terrified. Lowald was right, though, about what this stuff will do to us, he went on. Once everything's fully loaded, Ham and I are going to take a mouthful each, and then take the whole haul for ourselves. We'll stash some of it away somewhere safe, then use the rest to buy our way back into the circus. The only problem is getting there. That's where you come in. What are you on about? How can I possibly help you get back to your circus? I asked. With that Sealy coin you got in your pocket, he said, lowering his voice so that I only barely heard him. These carts weren't meant to be powered manually, They run on fairy magic, and that coin's got enough that we can drive all 16 tons of our loot to anywhere in the worlds we want. I briefly considered denying that I even had the coin, but if he was determined, he could find and take it easily enough, so there really wasn't any point. Ignoring for the moment how you even know I have that, why not ask Vincent, I suggested. He's got way more Sealy silver than I do. He doesn't want out. You do, Gristle responded. You tried to escape once, and I know you're just itching for a chance to try again. But Ignazio knows what you are, doesn't he? He wouldn't have let you around the sap if he wasn't prepared for you to try to take some, I said. He doesn't know Ham, and I can take our masks off without his say-so, Gristle explained. We've been living off meager rations of powdered milk to keep us in line, but we were able to get a hold of a bottle of the fresh stuff and chugged it before we came here. Ignazio and Vothstag have no power over us right now. I'm sorry, milk? I asked, confused. Not important at the moment. Are you in or not? He asked. I considered his proposition for a moment, deciding on one final question before answering. Why not just take the coin from me? Because I'm a nice guy, he said with a sickeningly wide grin. And stealing Sealy silver tends not to end well. I don't need an answer now. The load's not full yet. Think about it, and when the time comes, do whatever you've got to do. He pulled his mask back down, and we finished hauling the cart over to fish and chips in silence. He wasn't wrong about me wanting to escape, but my plan had always been to quietly sneak off and be long gone before anyone noticed. A fight between Vothstag and a pair of superpowered clowns, followed by a daring getaway on an unseelie mining cart, was a bit riskier than anything I had envisioned. But at the same time, this was an unprecedented opportunity that would likely never come again. From the taproots of the world tree, I could go literally anywhere and never have to worry about Ignacio or his minions tracking me down. All it would cost me was the single coin I had to my name. I hauled the cart with Gristle for the rest of the shift. Eventually, we had a train of 16 pallets, each loaded with 50 20-kilogram sacks of crystallized sap. "That's it then, order's full," Vincent declared as he walked the length of the train, testing the chains to make sure the cargo was fully secured. "All of you hop in the front and let's get the hell out of here." Vothstag roared in disagreement, standing between us and the cart and making a vaguely groping gesture. Right, contraband check." Vincent nodded with a weary sigh as he outstretched his arms. "Nothing too invasive now, you hear? If this stuff was inside of us, you'd already know it." Vothstag didn't acknowledge his comment, but proceeded to pat him down and empty his pockets. Ham and Gristle each gave me a knowing look. If I did nothing, Vothstag would find my coin, and it would all be over for me anyway. I nodded my assent and braced myself for the worst. With a single swift motion, Ham and Gristle each pulled their masks off, and the visages of the two monstrous clowns were enough to throw all of us into immediate pandemonium. Ham's hair, eyes, lips, and nose were all a fiery red, and I saw now that the tips of their ears had a pink tinge, just like their fingers. The instant their masks were off, they wasted no time shoveling a handful of crystal sap into their mouths. Vothstag howled and charged straight at them, and everyone else scattered as quickly as they could to avoid being bulldozed by the massive deer man. Ham and Gristle stood their ground, each of them grabbing a hold of one of his antlers. Despite his size and speed, Vothstag was brought to a dead stop. He snorted and bellowed as he tried to force himself forward, but he was completely unable to overpower the two clowns. Ham and Gristle exchanged sinister smiles and began to spin Vothstag around and around. Within seconds, his feet were off the ground, and with each rotation, he gained more and more momentum until his attackers finally let go of his antlers and sent him flying into the distance. "The rest of you, stay out of our way," Gristle shouted as he marched towards the front cart, grabbing me by the scruff of my jacket and pulling me along with him. "Wait, why? Why can't they come? Why can't we all go?" I protested. "We don't know what half these freaks are, and we don't trust them," he said as he tossed me onto the cart. "Now drive. Go straight until I say otherwise." I looked out at my confused and frightened companions and took a bit of solace in the fact that they weren't entirely certain if I had betrayed them or if I was just being kidnapped. I hesitated for a moment, but Ham's sharp talons digging into my shoulder were enough to press me into action. With my coin of Sealy silver clutched in my right palm, I grabbed a firm hold of the driving shaft and pushed the train forward. It accelerated at a remarkable pace, and before I knew it, we were speeding away from our work site and towards freedom. "It's working. It's actually working," Gristle laughed in relief. "Even Vothstag can't run this fast," Ham declared triumphantly. "The whole haul is ours. We're rich. We're free." I wanted to celebrate with them. I really did. But deep down inside, I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. "You guys read that dossier Iggy gave us, right?" I asked. "The not things that gnaw the taproots are attracted to ontological anchors, anything that's more real than its surroundings. If you guys are reality benders and you just ate a massive power-up, doesn't that make you the realest things here?" "Isn't that cute? He thinks he knows more about ontodynamics than us because he read a dossier," Ham scoffed. "This isn't our first time on the fringes of the unreal, boy," Gristle replied. "You just drive this train and let us worry about..." Without warning, the taproot split open ahead of us into a fuming, festering chasm. The ground quake was enough to completely derail the train, and I ducked and rolled while I had the chance. When I came out of the roll, I looked up to see a titanic, disfigured, and disembodied head rising out of the chasm. The size and proportions of the entity fluctuated wildly, as if I was only looking at the three-dimensional facets of it, like the world tree itself. It was encrusted with some kind of dark barnacles, and anything that wasn't its face was covered in thousands of squirming and feathery tentacles of every conceivable length. It had no nose, but several mouths which chanted backward-sounding words in synchronicity with each other, dropping rotting black teeth every time they opened and closed. There were 6 randomly spaced and variously sized eyeballs, darting around independently of each other, each glowing with a sickly yellow light. I was paralyzed in fear, terrified that the knot thing would see me, but all 6 of its eyes soon locked onto Ham and Gristle. As it slowly ascended upwards like a hot air balloon, a pair of flickering tongues shot out of 2 of its mouths with predatory intent. The clowns were scooped up like flies, screaming as they were whisked back into the knot thing's cavernous maws. I don't know much about clowns or what they're capable of, only that Ham and Gristle never got a chance to test their mettle against this behemoth. A few chomps of its black teeth, and it was all over. I sat there in silence, watching as the knot thing continued to drift away, never daring to assume that it had forgotten about me. "Brandon," I heard a voice call from the distance. I was finally able to pull my eyes off the knot thing, and when I looked down the track, I saw the rest of my crew hurrying towards me, which included a very angry Vothstag. Grabbing me by the jacket and lifting me off the ground, he roared furiously in my face, demanding answers. "Easy, Vothstag, easy," Vincent insisted. "They just grabbed the kid. It wasn't his idea." Vothstag growled skeptically, eyeing the toppled train beside us. He knew it could have only been driven like that by Seelie magic, and I still had my lucky coin clutched tightly in my right hand. "Ham must have picked my pocket when he was working alongside us," Vincent suggested. I knew he didn't really think that. He knew exactly how many coins he had, and he knew he wasn't missing any. I don't know why he covered for me, but I owe him big. Serves him right, too. "Bloody idiot," he said with a sad shake of his head as he surveyed the wreckage. "Let this be a lesson for all of you if you ever think about stealing my Seelie silver. That's right, fish and chips, I'm looking at you." Vothstag howled again, clearly unconvinced. "They took me as a driver so they could stay focused on defending the train," I claimed. "If I hadn't jumped when I did, they may have stood a chance against that giant floating head. I saved our haul." Vothstag snorted in contempt, but set me back on my feet. I don't think he believed me, really, but he knew that Ignacio wouldn't hold him blameless in this little debacle either. So it was in all of our best interests not to cast aspersions on one another's stories. "Listen up, everybody. We're 2 men down, and we've got to get this rig back on the track before some other unspeakable abomination comes along. So get moving," Vincent ordered. For once, Vothstag was doing most of the work, using his might to set the carts back on the tracks, while the rest of us just picked up any sacks of sap that had come loose. "What a bloody joke," Lowald grumbled as he threw a sack onto a cart. "Down from 9 to 7. Any of us could still die at any minute. And for what? We mined 16 tons, and what do we get?" "Another day older," I agreed, throwing another sack next to his. "But some days that's enough." The drain. I had the dream again tonight. It seems to be coming more frequently now as we get closer to your arrival. Daddy says that it's got to have something to do with the hormones or morning sickness. He's always been practical that way, and it's one of the many reasons I love him and why he'll be such a good father to you. When he looks at a problem, he sees the edges of it, so clearly defined. But how do I tell a person like that the truth? How do I make him understand? I could tell him that right when I wake, I can't tell if I've truly left the dream, that I can feel the distorted images of my sleeping mind clinging to my skin like wet bandages. I could tell him that when I stumble through the pre-dawn and fall to my knees before our toilet bowl, that it's not morning sickness, which causes me to coat its porcelain interior, but fear. Not a measured fear, not the fear of a practical person, but the panicky, weightless fear of a small child. I could tell him that as I kneel on the cool tile floor, I often sneak furtive glances across the bathroom and watch the empty pit where our sink would be in daylight, and pray that I do not hear my name called out from within it. I could tell him all of this, and maybe he would believe me, and maybe he would even know what to do. But none of that is the kind of thing you tell a practical person. That story has no clear edges. So I close the toilet lid and lay my head against its cool surface and feel the nausea seep out of my core. I wait for clarity to reassert itself in my mind, the cobwebs of sleep dusting themselves into nothingness, and then I flush the toilet and make my way back to the bedroom. But as I leave the washroom, I can't help but notice that I lean subtly towards the outer wall, away from the vanity and our shared sink which it holds. Until the pregnancy, I had always been one to sleep through the night, but I find now that once fully awake, no matter the time, I'm up for the day. Still, it's too early to start my morning, and though it's not as restful as sleep, returning to the bed does relieve some of the strain in my back. There's a small added grace there, too, in that I get to spend time alone with you. I lay back in a half-seated position, close my eyes, and lay my hands across the swell of my belly. I breathe slowly, rhythmically, and imagine that I can feel your heartbeat synchronizing with mine. I begin to talk to you, not out loud as I don't want to wake Daddy, but in my thoughts. I tell you about myself and about the world and everyone who is waiting so anxiously to meet you. I explain how you are now the size of a sweet potato and how we'll be going to the doctor today to check in on you. I imagine your future and all the amazing things you will accomplish. I make sure you understand that all I want of you is to be happy and healthy and caring. And then sometimes, very rarely, but with a growing frequency, I hear you reply. You call to me from within myself, and images flash across the vista of my mind, which I swear are not of my own creation. It is in these moments that I feel nearest to you. I know that what I am experiencing isn't reality, but neither is it a dream. I can't go back to sleep once awake, but our little talks set me at such ease I enter a sort of trance state, half dreaming, half waking, such that I don't notice the morning light as it creeps across our bedroom, and when Daddy wakes and kisses you through my belly, I come to in a start. Oh shit, I'm sorry, Liz, I didn't mean to scare you, he says, pulling back from my torso. Are you okay, hun? Did you get enough sleep? I nod and smile. Daddy smiles back, but as he slides off the bed and moves towards the ensuite, I notice his eyes flit back to my face. The look is searching and concerned. The lack of sleep, the pains, the general rigor of growing you within myself has all taken its toll on my body. I know it shows in the darkening rings under my eyes, in the lines that deepen on my face, and I know Daddy notices and I know he worries. I love him for that, but we both understand it will all be worth it in the end, when we finally get to meet you. I try to relax and force the skin of my face to smooth. I stare ahead at the blank wall of our bedroom and listen as Daddy releases a stream of urine into the toilet bowl. He didn't lift the lid, but I won't say anything this time. He has enough to worry about, and worry is a cousin of anger. I don't want to fight this morning. I don't want to fight with you inside me. I don't want to play out the events of the dream. So, doctor today, right, babe? Daddy calls from the bathroom. It's the 1-week checkup, yeah? 22. It's the 22nd week. The thought materializes absently, mostly ignored by my working mind. I focus instead on the toilet flush and the sound of Daddy's bare feet as they move across the tile floor towards the sink. I realize I'm holding my breath and think, bizarrely, how in that way I'm holding your breath too. Then Daddy cries out, "Ah, Jesus!" I watch my hands, laid protectively over you, as they break out in goose flesh. I know that I could ask him what's wrong, but what would be the point? This is all so repetitive, a recitation of the message relayed to me by dreams. Liz, Daddy calls me, and I refuse to answer. If I do not speak, then we cannot progress. The end must remain as the end. I will not speak, and in my silence, I will not lose you. Oh, Lizzie, you couldn't make it to the toilet, my darling? The words are wrong, but that's not what brings an end to my dissociation. It's the care I hear in Daddy's voice. When I near the end of the dream, Daddy speaks to me, yes, but in roaring tones of anger and horror, not kindness, never care. I rise from the bed and walk the short distance to the washroom. Daddy stands before the sink. I tell myself I will not look, but as he moves his gaze downwards, I follow, slowly, obediently. I steel myself for what awaits me. But this is not the dream. The sink is empty, or nearly empty. A faint outline coats the porcelain, burnt yellow like the last of fall's leaves, and tendrils reaching from the drain in unmeasured jabbing spurts towards the rim of the sink. It's a stain that so easily could have been the residue of my morning sickness. An explanation so simple, a connection so natural, and yet I know that when I vomited in the early hours, I did so into the toilet. I'm certain of that. Tears come then, and Daddy holds me tightly. We are still pressed together when we feel you kick. Daddy beams at me, and I force myself to smile back. This is a first for him, to actually feel your movement, and it sends him off on an excited tangent about what sports you will play. Only I know that this is not a rarity. Whenever I approach the sink, I feel you reach out for it. The sign on the outer door of the office reads Dr. Ahmed, printed in stark gray letters, but the middle-aged woman who smiles as she applies gel to my distended belly has reminded me more than once to call her Amira. Daddy has told me before that a friend from work swears by Dr. Ahmed that she is the best obstetrician in the city, and that he would settle for nothing less. I couldn't say if that is all true, but I do know that she always runs warm water over her hands before donning her latex gloves and touching my skin. I know that she hums prettily along to the radio as she maneuvers her wand along my torso, and that this makes me feel at ease. I know she smells faintly of sandalwood. Lizzie, Daddy is staring at me. Did you hear what Dr. Ahmed said? Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Amira. Mommy brain, what were you saying? Amira smiles at me. Her eyes are kind, a warm brown color like strong coffee. Eyes that have seen many mothers through this same journey. I think briefly how there is a sadness in that. I wonder if she regrets turning a miracle into mundanity. I wonder if she has carried children of her own. I was saying, Elizabeth, that in regards to your child, I am very pleased with the results of today's tests. The ultrasound shows me that we are dealing with a healthy, well-formed baby. I open my mouth to vocalize relief, but Amira cuts off my reply. I am not, however, satisfied with your condition. Your stomach has grown along expected lines, but you have lost weight elsewhere. I can see that you are under an unusual strain. It is clearly written in those dark bags under your eyes. It seems to me as though you are wasting away. This is not... I've told her all this, doctor. I watch frustration flash across Amira's face as Daddy interrupts her. Well, I did, didn't I, Liz? This is not, Amira continues, ignoring Daddy, strictly indicative of a larger problem, but it is concerning. Most concerning is that the cause of these symptoms is not of a medical nature. Now, I know that it is not uncommon for first-time mothers to focus so greatly on the health of the child they carry that they lose sight of the fact that their own health is paramount. You are one being. The baby takes its life from you. We must have you well-rested and well-fed. Can you think of anything that may be causing you undue stress? I see the drain, just a blip, flash across my mind. The thought is not my own. The picture appears unbidden. I feel you kick within me. No, I lie. There's nothing that comes to mind. Amira watches my face. She looks from me to Daddy and back, then nods and wheels her chair back to her desk. She picks up a stack of paper and returns to the bedside. Mr. Hamilton, would you kindly bring this to the nurse's station? The sooner we file your wife's results, the sooner you can get her back to the comfort of your home, and I would like to finish my assessment in the interim. I see in his hesitation that Daddy doesn't understand or doesn't like Amira's request, but we all know that he can't argue against its logic. Without saying a word, he takes the sheaf and exits the room. Amira watches Daddy go, then picks up the phone from her desk and presses a button. Hello, yes, Anna, I'm sending Mr. Hamilton out to you. I wonder if you could hold him at the desk for 10 minutes or so. Yes, possible code violet. Thank you, Anna. Placing the handset back in its cradle, Amira turns back to me. Elizabeth, will you please tell me what is troubling you? If your husband is the cause of your condition, if he is abusing you, then we must take steps to ensure your protection. The suggestion is so absurd, I do not immediately respond. Amira waits, staring at me expectantly. No, Dr. Amma. I'm sorry, Amira, I begin. That couldn't be further from the truth. Dan takes very good care of me, and clearly you can't see it, but he's just as concerned as you are. He has absolutely nothing to do with this. My problem is, the issue isn't Dan. I didn't mean to make a hurtful accusation, Elizabeth. I simply need to examine all possible causes, and I prefer to start with that which may be most harmful. So you do know what the problem is, then? I have cornered myself. The image of carrying you to term within the padded walls of an asylum cell comes momentarily to mind. No, I trust Amira. I trust in her kindness. I don't know if she will believe me. Like Daddy, she is a practical person, but I do believe she will not punish me for something so out of my control, and perhaps this is the help I've been so desperately seeking. I exhale and begin. To see, Amira, do you believe that dreams may act as a kind of warning? The doctor's look is guarded, but she continues. I have read studies that broach the subject, yes. Something about our subconscious mind picking up data, of which our conscious mind is unaware, then regurgitating the information in the form of dreams. I can't speak to the validity of the experiment, but... No, sorry, I mean, do you think we can be given a glimpse of the future through our dreams? This step into the murky world of pseudo-occultism draws only a tight-lipped smile from the doctor. I continue undaunted. I've been having a recurring dream. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think it's a kind of portent of what's to come. Amira slowly nods at me to continue. It always begins the same way. I wake up early in the morning, well before dawn, and I'm up because I'm experiencing terrible nausea. It's worse than morning sickness, worse than food poisoning even. It feels like my insides are burning and my stomach is going to burst open at the belly button. I rush to the washroom then. Is this taking place in your current home, Amira clarifies, as it is now? Yes, exactly, just as it is now. I have trouble distinguishing it from real life. There's none of the looseness or randomness of dreams. It's simply my bedroom, my life. What happens then? Then I stumble into the washroom, and the pain is growing and growing. And I need to relieve it, and I know that I have to go to the toilet to vomit, but I stop myself at the vanity because... Amira allows the silence to linger uncomfortably, then prompts. Because... How do I continue? Hearing the dream described for the first time in the light of day only exaggerates its absurdity. I lay my hands around you and tell myself that crazy or not, believed or disbelieved, I have to finish if only to ensure your safety. Because I hear my name called out. It's quiet at first, a whisper so light I can't even tell if it's real. Something like, Liz. I search the bathroom for the source of the sound, but there's nothing. I'm completely alone. I become frantic. It's driving me crazy. And almost in response, the call gets louder and louder. Liz, 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 Liz. I notice the echo then, the echoing wetness of the sound, and it draws my attention to the sink. And then I realize the thing is in there. Down in the pipes, down in that darkness, and it's calling out to me. At this point, each repetition of my name blends together until it's all one undistinguishable, buzzing resonance. A sound or a chant which rings through me like something fetid and ancient, older than religion, older than music. And I can't control myself. The sound is in me, moving me. So I climb atop the vanity and I feel the thing grasping with its cold, wet tentacles, and it's moving up my body, and I realize it doesn't want me at all. I'm just a vessel to it. And then what does it do, Liz? It takes the baby. It takes the baby out of me, and I thank it because then the pain is gone. Amira sits still, staring at us for a very long time. In the throes of my retelling, I began to focus on the middle distance, but now, emotionally spent, but focused once more on the woman in front of me, I am relieved to realize the kindness has never left her eyes. She shifts her gaze downwards to the point where my hands clasp protectively in front of you, then returns them to meet my face. This is troubling, to put the situation mildly. Do I believe that this is a glimpse of the future revealed to you? No, of course not. I feel foolish, but Amira continues reassuringly. But that doesn't mean I will not help you, Liz. Whatever the reason for its recurrence or its questionable importance, the dream clearly has a negative effect on you. I am not a trained psychologist, but I may be able to treat the physical maladies this dream has caused. Amira swivels back to her desk and retrieves a small paper pad and begins to scribble on it. I am writing you a prescription for a low-grade Valium derivative. This would not regularly be advisable in the treatment of a pregnant patient, but in this case, I believe special measures must be undertaken. Take one pill before you sleep, and you should pass the night without dreams. I reach for the prescription, but before I can grasp it, Amira pulls the paper away. This is only a treatment of the symptom, not a cure. You must rest. You must eat. You must relax. Without extending into fields in which I am no expert, your dream is obviously the creation of a scared, strained mind and contains no truth. No truth other than this: you are your child's vessel, and as such, must maintain yourself to ensure the baby's health. I can feel tears coming then, but fight them back. I see emotion displayed in the doctor's face as well, though whether it's pity or fear, I cannot tell. She hides herself too well. Thank you, Amira. Thank you so much. I can't tell you. Our conversation is cut short as the door to Amira's small office slams open. Dan stands in the doorway, fury plainly labeled in the expansive whites of his eyes, the bovine flare of his nostrils. How dare you, he bellows as he crosses the room to step in between Amira and myself. Your nurse. Me an abusive husband? Liz, grab your things, my darling. We are leaving and we are never coming back. Mr. Hamilton, I had to take all, save it, but you better believe I'll be spreading word of this. I'm going to flood your reviews, lady. I'm telling everyone I know to stay well clear. I'm going to ruin you. Daddy has bundled us up now and is quickly moving our small family unit out the door and into the hall. He saves whatever parting barb he had in mind, employing instead his most thunderous scowl. I try to catch a final glimpse of Amira before I cross the threshold to make her see how sorry I am, but all I can make out is the gray streaks in her dark hair, floating above Daddy's shoulder, like seagrass in the moonlight. I am not afraid, I tell my reflection in the mirror. The dream is a dream, nothing more. I stand before the vanity of our ensuite and cautiously lower my hands to its marble surface. The counter is cold but reassuringly solid under my weight. This is reality. This is normalcy. The small green pill stares back at me from beside the sink, unblinking as a malevolent eye. I lower my head to the sink basin and hover my ear above the drain. I restrain the urge to scream into the hole and wait. Nothing. Of course there is nothing. For a week now there's been nothing. No dreams, no nausea, no voices in the drain. All as it should be, and all thanks to Dr. Amira's tablets. I've started gaining back weight, and the dark circles under my eyes have begun to clear. Sleep is a black void, but it lasts the night through, and I feel at least partially rested when I wake. There is one negative side effect, however. I no longer hear from you. We cannot convene in the early hours. My mind is my own, and I find myself speaking to you less and less. It is sad, but your safety is the priority. Still, I miss our connection. I lift my belly up towards the drain, but the only reaction it elicits is a gurgle in my stomach. You have gone quiet. Are you coming to bed? Daddy asks from the outer room. Could you turn the light off when you come over? Of course, just a sec. I respond as I take the pill and dry swallow it with a grimace. The medication is hidden from Daddy in my makeup bag, though I'm not sure he would care even if he knew. After his outburst at Dr. Amira's office, he has become reluctant to involve himself with anything pregnancy-related. Don't think for a second this means he loves you any less. He's only embarrassed. Daddy just needs time to lick his wounds. As I enter the bedroom and turn off the overhead light, I can feel the first hints of the pill working its way through my system. My eyelids begin to lag, and my thoughts become muddled. Daddy speaks to me, and I mumble a response, the words forgotten as soon as they leave my lips. I lie my head on the pillow and feel the black rush of unconsciousness descend upon me like a wave. I am asleep before Daddy has turned off his bedside lamp. The pain is not what wakes me, nor the chill which has crept across my uncovered skin. It is the faint sense of movement which pulls me from the darkness. The incremental sliding of hardwood floor against my skin. My initial response is one of confusion. Questions flood my mind. Where am I? Where is Dan? Why am I on the floor? The thoughts come sluggishly, and I realize with stupid slowness that the drug must still be cavorting through my system. Panic begins to rise from my stomach, but I fight it back. I cannot let fear seize me before I understand what is happening. I ask my eyes to open, but the command is only half acknowledged. My left eyelid parts sluggishly, while the right stays pressed against the floor. All I can make out from my half-open eye is wood grain moving by in uneven lurches, and the moonlight, which plays along the baseboards. I attempt to lift my head, but only succeed in pressing out a groaning mumble, which sounds as if it were spoken by another's mouth. I cannot call for Dan. My groans are nowhere near loud enough to wake him. I am alone. It is then that pain cuts through the pill-induced fog and rings out loud and true. What the drug had hidden from me till now is a sharp, repeated two-pronged jab which tears against the interior lining of my womb. I want to scream, but the gummy bloating of my vocal cords prevents me. Instead, I focus on the sensation and allow it to drive the last of the confusion from my mind. The truth this clarity brings makes me wish I could return to the oblivion of medically induced sleep forever. I realize then that the pain inside my body is associated directly with my slow movement across the floor. With each stab, my flesh is pressed against the hardwood and dragged backwards, propelling the entire unit inch by excruciating inch forward. Limited control is returning to my body now, and with difficulty, I am able to push my head upwards in the direction of my unintended destination. The black mouth of our bathroom doorway yawns before me. The dream is a dream. I see now. I can feel the minute variations in pressure against my organs, the tickling points of internal contact that hide beneath the pain. It's you. I feel your hands as they push against me from within, your feet as they kick against my ribs. You have always yearned for the drain, or perhaps the thing that lives within the drain has always yearned for you. But now Amira's work has blocked your progress. The pill disabled your vessel, made communion impossible, so you took the matter up yourself as best you could. My stomach flips and saliva fills my mouth. I allow it. The contents of my stomach spill across the floor, and whether a placebic or truly cleansing act, I feel fine motor control begin to spread throughout my body. I'm finally able to halt your progress by turning onto my back just as we breach the doorway to the bathroom. The effort leaves me soaked in sweat, and pain radiates from my torso. I close my eyes against the waves of agony. A faint glow spreads across my eyelids, a sickly green which speaks of forgotten things long shunned from the natural light of day. I feel rather than hear the shuddering vibrations of the drain pipe as your unknowable friend makes its way upwards towards us. You are still. The pain ends abruptly. You know the time is at hand. Scramble backwards away from the vanity, pushing my back up against the far wall, my eyes closed all the time. Low moans escape from me, but the echoing scream I truly desire to create seems momentarily to elude me. Instinctively, my hands come down to protect you, but the wriggling ambulations I feel there send another wave of nausea through me, and I pull my hands away as if scalded. The green light grows brighter, and I shield my face against it. Where it touches my skin, it seems to leave a greasy residue. The sound of the thing is all around us now, its scratching, grasping appendages snaking out over the tile of the bathroom. I breathe in its odor, a musk of rotting, forgotten things, long since washed or flushed away into the blind madness of its subterranean sewer world. I recoil as the first cold tentacle brushes along my bare foot. I feel you inside me shuddering wildly at the thing's touch, reaching back towards it. In that moment, given the proper tool, I would have cut you out myself. Then I hear the voice, quiet at first, but steadily growing as its purchase in our world solidifies within you. Lists. I scream then. I scream until the sound dies within me. Then I am left humming tunelessly, swaying beside the toilet. This is where Daddy will find me. Daddy who sees such straight lines. Daddy who will ignore the unknowable and instead focus on nursing me so carefully back to health. Daddy who will help me through the last few painful months of your delivery. Daddy who I know is no longer your daddy. My friend works for the city's CCTV Archives and has seen some disturbing things. I hadn't seen Mike in a few months. He'd been buried in work, and our usual weekend nights out had about disappeared. Then he called me on a Thursday and invited me over for drinks. I jumped at the invite, but took note of how depressed he sounded on the phone. By the time I got there, Mike had already started drinking and was slurring his words. A dark cloud seemed to hover over him, which got worse as we drank. I finally asked what had been going on with him. Mike turned darker, afraid. He said it had to do with work. I never really knew what Mike did for a living. I did know he worked for the city in the tech department and was involved with the CCTV surveillance network, but I never knew what his day-to-day operations were, which he began to describe in detail. Mike explained there were thousands of cameras scattered throughout the downtown core, outlying neighborhoods and well into the suburbs of our 1 million plus city. His responsibility was to categorize and archive all the incoming footage. Most of the footage went into very general classifications and were saved in hard drive farms and identified with a lengthy combination of numbers and letters for categorical archiving. They were truly meant to be forgotten about. It was an expansive task, but Mike designed and built an AI screening program that detected common patterns in footage, then sectioned out anomalous behavior for review. The vast majority wasn't noteworthy, something like 99.99%. Then there was the 0.01%. The car accidents, assaults, swarmings, rapes, abductions, murders, those went into a special archive for use in criminal investigations. And then there was the 0.0001%. They were held in a classified archive and contained footage capturing events that for all accounts were unexplainable. This was called the Tartarus Archive. I looked up the word Tartarus's after and discovered it was one of the darkest, deepest prisons from Greek mythology. It was said that if you dropped an anvil from heaven, it would take 7 days for it to reach the earth. It would take another 7 days for the anvil to reach Tartarus. It was the place you sent titans when there was nowhere else that could contain them. When Sisyphus was condemned to an eternity of futility and frustration with a large boulder and a mountain slope, that punishment was carried out in Tartarus. As it turned out, the name was quite fitting to the archive's growing contents. Some footage could be simplified to strange optical anomalies in the camera and coincidences of light or crackheads on a bender through the subway systems. Other footage, though, defied logic. Others are what captured Mike's mind that evening. He'd been breaking protocol and bringing hard drives home at night. In fact, he'd been splicing the footage together, capturing and compiling repeat aberrations and editing them into linear sequences. Mike wanted to show me some. It wasn't in a bragging or showing off kind of way. It felt more like the sharing of a heavy burden kind of way. I asked if showing me would get him in trouble, but he waved the idea away. I said, yeah, obviously I want to see what's going on in my city. Mike led me into his workroom, where he had monitors and towers and piles of externals set up. We sat down and he skimmed through some drives nervously. Then he landed on one. Mike told me this anomaly was codenamed Lincoln Spectre. He pressed play. On the largest screen, black and white footage started up, showing Lincoln Avenue, one of our less attractive downtown streets, at 3 a.m. The camera angle showed the length of Lincoln Ave as it led into the downtown core. The street appeared empty and quiet. From a side road, a woman emerged, walking towards the camera. As she approached the intersection, she turned over her shoulder and appeared to scream. The woman took off, sprinting past the camera, which cut to a new, wider angle from another camera across the street. We watched the woman running frantically, seemingly being chased. But she was the only one on the street. There was no one else anywhere around her. The woman kept screaming as she ran, and the cameras kept following, cutting between different CCTV angles. We watched as the woman was chased into the middle of an empty intersection. She fell, then cowered as if something massive was standing over her. The woman's neck stiffened, and she began to levitate off the ground. Her body looked like a rag doll as something lifted her by the throat until she was floating, a dozen feet above the road, in the middle of the intersection. Then the woman's head snapped to the left, and her body fell back to the ground. The video ended and went black. I sat shocked. Mike saw my expression and said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." I asked if that was real, if what I saw was unaltered, was raw footage. Mike said all he'd done was put the clips together, none of the content had been touched. He told me he found out the incident ended up being described as a hit and run, and the case was left figuratively open for more evidence to amass, which it never would. The department kept the footage hidden, claiming it was a camera malfunction. No one outside of Mike and his boss had seen the video of how the poor woman actually died. I started to understand the air of somberness Mike was carrying around. Mike started the next video. This one was codenamed Black Crab and was much longer than the previous one. It started in the subway systems at the underground Walkley station, shortly after closing up for the night. Walkley was the last stop on the route, and the exterior was shouldered by a new housing development on one side and untouched forest and swampland on the other. The camera was pointed down along the subway platform on the east side and showed its entire length with benches and garbage cans populating it. At the far end, the tunnel was filled with darkness. The lights on the platform shut off and the station went dark. The camera switched to night vision and everything became visible again. My eyes trained on the platform, waiting for something to happen. Finally, there was movement. It was coming from the tunnel. It was difficult to identify what exactly it was at first, as its movements were strange and the footage was grainy. But it got closer to the camera and I got a better look. It resembled a human, a man, but he was walking on his hands and feet, upside down, with his back arched and his stomach pointed to the ceiling. He had long, dark hair that dragged along the ground, and he wore tattered layers of old jackets and torn pants. He moved like a crab, jerkily yet quickly and easily, as he made his way to the staircase. The footage cut to a new camera in the dark hallway leading to the stairs out of the station. We watched the crab walker claw up 2 steps at a time and then crawl over the turnstiles and towards the exit. The footage cut again, now showing the exterior of the station entrance. The crab walker squeezed and twisted and maneuvered his body through the locked and closed entrance gate. It looked impossible to accomplish, but he did it. Once outside, the crab walker eyed his surroundings before skittering off towards the woods and disappearing. The footage cut to an hour later and revealed the crab walker reappearing from the woods. He was dragging a small animal by the tail in his teeth. The animal looked like a cat. The crab walker squeezed back through the gate, crawled through the station, and disappeared into the subway tunnel. Again, Mike saw my expression and told me there was more. He showed me the length of the video, which was over an hour long. Mike had compiled over 20 sequences of the crab walker creeping out of the subway station and into the woods. Mike skimmed through the video towards the end and we watched the crab walker come out of a sewer in a downtown alleyway. It crawled over to a pile of garbage bags and cardboard boxes. Then it jumped into them, and some kind of vicious frenzy ensued. There was someone else in the pile of garbage. Hands and feet thrashed about as they were struggling for their life. Then the movement stopped, and the hands and feet went still. The crab walker's body moved jerkily about, but I couldn't see what was happening because of the darkness and all the garbage bags and boxes obscuring the camera's view. Mike leaned over to me and whispered that the crab walker was eating a homeless man. This caused a criminal investigation as the dead body was found mutilated and festering in the open alleyway. Mike followed up on the inquiry. What he discovered was the crab walker was who authorities believed to be a man named David Fletcher. Decades ago, David had been a prominent lawyer with a family. One Christmas, there was a house fire and his wife and kids were killed in the blaze. It was David's fault. He lost everything, including his mind. Everyone has a breaking point, whether they know it or not. A place where they bend too far and then snap. David found his. Family and friends described his descent as nightmarish. David lived on the streets, became addicted to drugs, and tumbled into mental illness. The last anyone knew of him was from 10 years prior. He'd thrown himself in front of a subway at the Walkley station, and no one heard from or saw him again. It appeared that somehow, David had survived the subway hit. His back had broken and healed strangely, causing him to move the way he did. He'd adapted to the new posture and lived in the darkness of the subway tunnels, finding sustenance from drain water and the wild animals he caught. That was what Mike found out, at least. But then he said that was just the answer the investigators gave in discovery. Who knows where the truth lay? Mike said there was always an answer for the videos he saw. Whether the answers were true or not, no one knew. But the ones that had to become public all needed explanations, however absurd, essentially. Either way, David was never found and didn't reappear on the subway footage. Mike plugged a new hard drive in. He poured a fresh drink and told me this was the one that was troubling him. The file was codenamed Cloud Mirror. I wasn't sure I wanted to see it, but before I could object, Mike pressed play. All the monitors lit up with footage from different intersections downtown, on the exact date and time as each other. There were 5 in total. The streets on each screen were empty and quiet, no cars or people. Suddenly, at the exact same time in the center of the intersections, a small glow pulsed into existence. It was some kind of orb, roughly the size of a bowling ball. The streetlights around it pulsed with energy waves as the orb grew larger. It grew to the size of a beacher. It grew to the size of a beach ball. Then it flashed out. The streetlights went back to normal and the intersection was as lifeless as it was before. I asked Mike what they were. He told me he had gigs of footage of the orbs and had watched them repeatedly. He didn't know what they were, at first. Then they started to change. Mike clicked onto the next video. Again, the 5 monitors lit up with the same intersections and time of night, but several weeks later. The streetlights glowed and pulsed, and an orb manifested into existence again. It grew to its beach ball size, but then altered its surface and glow. Something gas-like replaced it, growing outward into a couch-sized cloud of dark gray. One of the cameras was closer, so I got to see the small clouds in detail. It looked like a volcanic eruption wrapping around itself. They were large, constantly morphing blobs that curled outward from a glowing center, resembling a mandelbulb fractal as a gaseous-based organism. It was fascinating to see them floating in the middle of the street, so alien to our roads and stoplights and street lamps. Then they began to move. Gliding down empty roads, the cameras cut to different angles, following the clouds on some unknown path, zigging and zagging onto new streets and through alleyways. Then they'd stop. The clouds hovered in the center of their intersection. They'd lower to ground level, standing straight up like a large coffin. Holding rigid to the shape, their exteriors continued to shift and mold together like magnets made of smoke. Something on one of the monitors caught my eye. Down the street, people appeared. They'd seen the cloud and were walking towards it. The group looked drunk and fascinated by the floating entity. So much so, they were approaching it. As they did, the cloud became brighter. The street lamps around it pulsed. The group were in some kind of trance, staring into the morphing blob. One of the group, a guy, stared into it like a zombie, then walked right into the cloud and disappeared. None of the group tried to stop him. Instead, another one followed him in, and another, and another. All 5 members of the group disappeared in the cloud. Then they reappeared, one at a time, the guy first. Then in the order they went in. Only, they weren't stumbling and boisterous and drunk now. They were walking upright, using minimal movements. They formed in a perfect 5-person circle for several seconds over quick words, then turned, and all went in separate directions. Their strides, arm swings, and speed all matched. Another monitor showed a similar situation with a larger group of people, lost in reverie as they marched, one after another, into the cloud. Each monitor showed the same thing now, people entering the clouds and coming back out. Different. Mike stopped the video. I asked him if he'd shown this to anyone else. He said he hadn't, not even to his one boss, which was a problem because he had a meeting with his boss in the morning to discuss the missing footage. I asked why he didn't show the footage to his boss. This footage seemed more than serious. People were being replaced by something. Mike sighed and put a new video on. The main monitor lit up and showed a new downtown street. The date was from earlier this week. One of the clouds was floating in the intersection. A middle-aged couple were walking nearby, the husband with a slight limp in his right leg. The couple saw the cloud and were sucked in by its aura. They approached it, eyes wide and mouths open. Both the husband and wife entered the cloud and disappeared. After a moment, they reappeared. The husband's limp was gone. Mike turned to me and said, "That was my boss and his wife." Are we living the 3-body problem? Something big is on the horizon, and I swear it's not just my ego. But I did watch the Netflix show, which basically makes me an expert, right? So if I've gotten something hilariously wrong, or if you've spotted any wild connections I missed, feel free to jump in and give me the old actually treatment. First off, this isn't me trying to start some fear apocalypse. Let's keep this a chill, fun discussion, or at least as fun as discussing potentially mind-bending, reality-breaking events can be. Because, honestly, the stuff happening around us right now is freakishly similar to the plot of the show. Could we be in the middle of a slow, strategic drip campaign, getting humanity ready for something huge? You know, the kind of thing that makes you wonder if it's time to invest in a bunker. The uncanny relevance of the 3-body problem. For those not in the know, the 3-body problem is a wild ride where humanity discovers an advanced alien civilization, the Trisolarans, living in an unstable star system. But here's where it gets spicy. The Trisolarans have been pulling strings behind the scenes on Earth, manipulating humanity long before their RSVP to the invasion party. Governments? Totally in on it. They're slow dripping information, trying not to send everyone into full-blown freak-out mode while we wrestle with existential threats like, should I get a bunker or watch the new season of Love is Blind UK, James Webb's mysterious discoveries? So there's some serious buzz right now that the James Webb Space Telescope might have found something big enough to prompt a private briefing to Congress. We're talking potential techno-signatures, like city lights on a planet 4.9 light-years away. Oh, and there's also chatter about an object out there making course corrections, which is the universal sign for, hey, we're not just space debris. The sudden surge toward AGI, preparation for something bigger. Leopold Aschenbrenner from OpenAI thinks AGI by 2027 is strikingly plausible, which sounds suspiciously like buckle up. Meanwhile, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA casually drops that AI is now designing new AI at a pace of Moore's Law squared. Like, that's not the most terrifyingly cool thing you've ever heard. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like we're just trying to build smarter machines. maybe, just maybe, we're getting ready for something else. I mean, the timing's a little too coincidental, don't you think? The same year AGI might come online is the same year we keep hearing whispers about potential disclosure. I mean, what are the odds? Is 2027 just the year everything levels up? AI, aliens, and my inability to process it all? Are hidden forces slowing down scientific progress? Or is science just stuck in a really long traffic jam? In the three-body problem, the Trisolarans, an alien race chilling out 4.37 light-years away in the Alpha Centauri system, catch wind of Earth and decide to invade. Even with their advanced tech, they can't travel faster than light. So, it's going to take them about 450 years to get here. That's right, we've got almost half a millennium to prepare. Now, the Trisolarans' big worry? That humanity will advance so much in those centuries that by the time they roll up, we'll be way ahead of them, zipping around in quantum spaceships while they're still stuck with sublight drives. To keep this from happening, they send over sophons, AI-powered particles designed to sabotage our scientific progress, specifically in fundamental physics, and keep us from reaching their level by the time they arrive. So, while their fleet is en route, we're stuck in a bit of a scientific chokehold. But instead of throwing in the towel, humanity pivots. We start pushing forward in other areas: space engineering, AI, mechanical systems, the stuff the sophons can't mess with. The novel's all about this long 450-year waiting game, where we're prepping for an inevitable invasion while trying to outsmart the cosmic curveball we've been thrown. Now, if you really want to get speculative, could something like this be happening in our world? Think about it. Since 1973, we've been stuck in particle physics while other areas, like AI and tech, are advancing at a breakneck pace. Even Eric Weinstein on the Joe Rogan podcast has pointed out how fundamental physics has stalled despite decades of work on theories like string theory. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Or maybe, like in the three-body problem, there's some hidden force, our own modern-day sophons, holding us back, quietly hitting the brakes on scientific breakthroughs while we unknowingly prep for something bigger. The Collins elite and their role in shaping disclosure. In the three-body problem, some humans, completely freaked out by the idea of getting wiped out by the Trisolarans, think their best move is to team up with the aliens. Enter the Earth Trisolaris Organization, ETO, a group convinced that surrendering to an advanced civilization is humanity's only shot at survival. Of course, the Trisolarans see these collaborators as expendable pawns. Now, shift to real life. Ever heard of the Collins elite? According to Nick Redfern's book, Final Events and Whispers from Guys like Ross Coulthart and Lou Elizondo, the Collins elite is this ultra-secretive group within the US government that believes alien phenomena aren't just aliens, they're demonic. That's right. These guys are convinced we're not just dealing with little green men, but literal forces of darkness. And their job? Block any public disclosure of this terrifying info. It's kind of like the ETO in the three-body problem, where different factions have their own wild ideas about aliens. But if groups like the Collins elite are real, and they're operating behind closed doors with their own hidden agendas, what else could be happening behind the scenes? Secret factions, private entities with their own motives, maybe even deals being made with extraterrestrial beings. This could explain why some fields of science, like particle physics, have felt stagnant since the 1970s, while AI is advancing like they've got a cheat code. Maybe, just maybe, certain groups are steering the scientific ship, funneling resources into areas they can control or profit from, while quietly suppressing discoveries that could trigger existential chaos. It's like those modern-day sophons from the three-body problem, keeping humanity's most dangerous ideas locked away while they play a long game for control. But here's a question that'll keep you up at night. If the Collins elite thinks UFOs are demonic, then where are the angels? Shouldn't we be teaming up with the good guys? I mean, if we're diving headfirst into the supernatural, why not place our bets on the winged heroes? It's like we're stuck in the weirdest reality show ever, one we didn't exactly sign up for but can't stop watching. For more on these mind-bending ideas, go down the rabbit hole with Jesse Michaels' American Alchemy, the CIA scientist who built real UFOs. because if you're not already questioning everything, you will be soon. Ross Coulthart on apocalyptic events and pole reversals, or why you should probably buy that bunker just in case. Ross Coulthart, investigative journalist extraordinaire, has shared some pretty unsettling tidbits about potential apocalyptic scenarios. In one interview, Coulthart mentioned that his sources have hinted at catastrophic possibilities, including a magnetic pole reversal. Now, he admits he's no scientist and doesn't fully get how flipping the poles could trigger geological chaos, but apparently it's a hot topic among researchers. And when Coulthart drops a line like, "What I've been told would cause panic if I said it," that's about the time you start wondering if there's an Airbnb for bunkers, because I'd like a cozy underground option with Wi-Fi, please. And there's more. Earth's magnetic north has been shifting faster than my commitment to a New Year's resolution ever since it was first measured in 1903. Some experts are now biting their nails, fearing this could lead to a full magnetic pole reversal. While the exact outcome is up for debate, a few nightmare fuel theories suggest it could happen in a snap, which could bring 1,500 miles per hour winds that would basically give the Earth a power wash. Massive tectonic freakouts. A total reshuffling of geography and weather, where only folks chilling near the new equator might have a shot at not freezing solid. On the flip side, some optimists think it might be a gentler process. Still, even the less violent version could leave us scrambling as climate patterns go haywire, with much of the planet turning into a deep freeze. Coulthart also threw in a fun twist. The solar maximum, expected in 2024, could line up perfectly with a pole reversal. Now, imagine a coronal mass ejection, CME, from the sun hitting us right when Earth's magnetic field is on vacation. We're talking power grid failures, satellites gone haywire, and communication breakdowns that would leave us staring at blank screens. Leslie Kean's distressing outlook. Leslie Kean, the journalist known for blowing minds with her work on UFO disclosure, dropped some seriously unsettling comments during her interview on Theories of Everything with Kurt Humungal. Kean seemed pretty convinced that the near future is going to be dramatically different from the comfy little world we know today. And the way she said it, let's just say her clear distress didn't exactly leave me feeling warm and fuzzy. When Kurt pressed her for details about what's got her spooked, Kean tried steering the convo towards the usual suspects, climate change and geopolitical chaos. But her vague answers, they had that "I know something I can't say" vibe, like a secret she's been sworn to keep. She hinted that her sources, much like those whispering to Ross Coulthart, have warned her about looming troubles, possibly even a catastrophic pole shift. Fun times, right? Here's a key moment, Kurt Humungal. "Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that within a decade." Leslie Kean. "Oh, definitely. It better happen before that. I don't think we're going to be in any shape in a decade to be doing very much of anything, so I'm not hopeful for the future direction that we're moving in. And the future direction climate-wise, AI-wise, climate-wise, and geopolitical-wise. I think things are going to be pretty difficult starting in a few years, from what I've been told by my sources." When asked if these difficulties could affect things like, I don't know, electricity, Kean didn't exactly wave it off. She hinted that some of the comforts we rely on today might not be so sustainable in the not-so-distant future. Her grim outlook paints a picture of a world on the edge of some big, uncomfortable changes, whether it's climate, global politics, or something more out of left field. Kean's reluctance to spill the full tea, combined with the implied knowledge of something troubling on the horizon, makes it feel like we're in the slow burn buildup to a real-world crisis. Lou Elizondo's cryptic comments. Lou Elizondo, the former Pentagon insider, UAP whisperer, and now a NY Times best-selling author for his new book, recently dropped a cryptic little nugget on The Good Trouble Show. When asked about some mysterious upcoming event, he said, "I am aware of it, but that is not my conversation to have." Now, I don't know about you, but that's the kind of comment that makes me want to throw my popcorn at the screen. What exactly isn't Lou telling us? The suspense is real. And oh yeah, there's more. Elizondo also mentioned that U.S. Navy submarines have encountered massive objects underwater, objects bigger than the 600 feet subs themselves, zooming around at 400, 500 knots, which, if you're keeping track, is fast enough to make you go WTF. Lou also popped up on the Theories of Everything podcast with Kurt Heimungal, where he casually mentioned that the three-body problem might just be soft disclosure. You know, because nothing says, heads up, something's coming, like a best-selling sci-fi novel. He said, imagine a scenario where we have 50 years to prepare for something, but now that the cat is out of the bag, that exceptional will happen tomorrow. So yeah, that cat's not just out of the bag, it's sprinting straight into our living rooms. John Lear's prophetic warning in 1989, the original I told you so in the UFO world. Way back in 1989, UFO whistleblower John Lear sat down with George Knapp and dropped a bombshell. Something big involving extraterrestrial contact was on the horizon. At the time, it probably sounded like science fiction on steroids, but looking at where we are now, with UAP revelations, space discoveries, and government transparency, sort of, Lear's words are starting to feel a whole lot more like prophecy. It's like he was setting up the slowest drip campaign in history. So the real question is, was the groundwork for today's big UFO revelations actually laid decades ago? John Ramirez's 2027 prediction. John Ramirez, a former CIA officer who seems to know a thing or two about secrets, has dropped a tantalizing hint that something big is coming in 2027. According to him, the US government has a 5-year deadline, starting from 2022, to get the public ready for whatever this monumental event is. Sounds a bit like the slow burn prep from the three-body problem, where governments eased everyone into the idea of first contact. Except here, we don't get centuries to prepare. We get 5 years, no pressure. And the fact that more than one insider is circling 2027 as a crucial year, yeah, that feels like a red flag. Phil Schneider's Project Bluebeam prediction for 2027. Phil Schneider, a controversial figure in the UFO and conspiracy world, made waves with his prediction about a secret operation known as Project Bluebeam *. According to Schneider, 2027 is the year when this mysterious event is supposed to go down, but here's the twist. Project Bluebeam allegedly involves an alien invasion, yep, a fake one, designed to manipulate the global population and maybe even bring in a shiny new world order. Sounds like the plot of a sci-fi thriller, except Schneider was dead serious. Now, whether you believe Schneider or not, the fact that more than a few people are pointing to 2027 as a big year certainly raises some eyebrows. Real extraterrestrial contact or a manufactured hoax, the idea that governments are gearing up for a monumental shift involving UFOs or alien life, feels like we're all living in a slow-motion trailer for a movie we didn't ask to see. There are conspiracies swirling around Schneider's death, with many claiming he didn't die of natural causes. Some think he knew too much about Project Bluebeam and, well, you can guess the rest. The letter to Art Bell and Linda Moulton Howe, 1996. One of the more mind-bending clues in the extraterrestrial mystery world came way back in 1996. Yeah, while we were busy with friends and Tamagotchis. A letter sent to radio legend Art Bell and researcher Linda Moulton Howe arrived with a little something extra, alleged artifacts tied to the Roswell incident. And what did the letter claim? Full-on contact between humans and extraterrestrials was expected around, drumroll please, 2025. 2 years is close enough to 2027, right? The letter mentions a transition. It also talks about these artifacts being made from metals that are almost indistinguishable from Earth materials. Why? Because the aliens were apparently smart enough to avoid leaving behind anything too alien-looking if it got into human hands. Classic overachievers. And as a bonus, the letter explains how these alien ships, or probe ships, were built using materials that could dodge detection by our radar systems. Chris Bledsoe and The Ladies, 2026-2027's prophecy. Chris Bledsoe, a well-known UAP experiencer who's caught the attention of some seriously credible researchers, has been getting messages from an entity he calls The Lady Sounds Mystical, right? Well, according to Bledsoe, the lady told him that something big asterisk is going down in late 2026 or early 2027, a moment that will bring new knowledge for mankind. Now, whether that means disclosure, a mass alien contact event, or something else that'll have us all Googling what's the appropriate attire for meeting extraterrestrials, is still up in the air. Bashar's predictions: 2026, 2027's full-scale contact. One more fascinating prediction comes from Daryl Anka, who channels an entity named Bashar. Now, Bashar doesn't make a lot of predictions, only when there's a 95% chance something's actually going down. So when Bashar says that aliens are set to announce themselves to humanity by late 2026 or early 2027, unless we somehow completely derail the timeline, you might want to start taking that seriously. Or, at the very least, consider brushing up on your intergalactic etiquette. According to Bashar, full-scale contact is coming soon, and unless something drastic changes in our trajectory, by 2027 we could be rolling out the welcome mat for our new alien friends. Stephen Greer, the jig is up in the secret government. Stephen Greer has been stirring the pot, claiming that big shifts are happening behind the curtain within the secret government, especially when it comes to UFOs and extraterrestrial disclosure. According to Greer, the jig is up, meaning the decades-long cloak and dagger act surrounding UAPs, reverse-engineered tech, and those oh-so-mysterious alien contacts is starting to unravel faster than your Gen Z girlfriend's attempt at knitting a sweater. Greer hints that key players in these secretive programs are scrambling, moving assets, and bracing for what seems inevitable. God of Chaos, Apophis, a near-miss or catastrophic impact in 2029. The truth awaits in 2027, or why billionaires are already booking their bunkers. One big rock-shaped concern on the horizon is asteroid Apophis, set to swing by in 2029. Originally, this 370-meter-wide behemoth had scientists fearing a direct impact with Earth. But as of now, it looks like we're getting a near miss. Phew! The only catch? Apophis will zip by closer than some of our satellites. So, while a direct hit is looking less likely, there's still a touch of, wait, what if, hanging in the air. We won't know for sure until 2027 if Apophis is sticking to its non-impact plans. That's right, 2027 strikes again. The 80-year cycle. Are we heading toward a new era of crisis and rebirth? The Strauss-Howe generational theory, aka the four turnings theory, is basically the universe's way of saying history's on repeat. According to this framework, society goes through four distinct generational phases, each lasting about 20 to 25 years, adding up to a full 80 to 85-year cycle. Here's the rundown. The first generation, the hero crew, comes in hot after a crisis, building institutions and systems to prevent future disasters. The second generation, the artist, shows up and asks, "Are we sure about these systems?" and slowly starts weakening them. By the time the third generation, the nomad, rolls in, they're like, yeah, these institutions are broken, and it's all about individualism. Then comes the fourth season, the fourth turning, where everything goes haywire. Institutions crumble, chaos reigns, and society has to rebuild from the ashes. It's like the season finale of history, complete with destruction, revolution or war, and, of course, a rebirth of a shiny new societal order. The fascinating part? This theory nails why major crises and cultural shifts tend to show up like clockwork. Big moments like the American Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II fit perfectly into this cycle. And spoiler alert, according to this theory, we're now entering another fourth turning. Conclusion: a monumental shift is coming, and the clues are all around us. As we start to connect the dots, it's getting pretty hard to shake the feeling that something big is coming. Are we gearing up for first contact with an alien civilization? Or is this slow drip of revelations setting us up for something else, like a technological singularity, a massive global reset, or a shift in human consciousness? It's like we're characters in a story that's rapidly approaching its climax. The signs are there, the parallels are striking. And maybe, just maybe, the three-body problem hasn't just been a novel, it's been a mirror reflecting a reality we're inching closer to every day. Now, this isn't about fear-mongering. No one's suggesting we all start panic-buying canned beans, although it wouldn't hurt. It's about staying aware, open, and curious. Let's keep the conversation going, share insights, and piece together this unfolding narrative. Because when the moment finally arrives, whether it's in 2027 or another curveball of a year, we'll have seen the signs, connected the dots, and hopefully be ready to face whatever comes next. Popcorn, anyone? This is not a suicide note. 3 months ago, I learned of my uncle's passing. We weren't particularly close, but he left me one of his houses in the will. I was touched, but just wanted to sell it off. I am a fairly new father of twin girls, and didn't need another thing to manage right now. To speed up the process, I decided to travel across the country to live in the house until a sale was assured. My job just requires a laptop and phone, so I was approved to work remotely for the time being. Unfortunately, my wife had to stay at her job, so I had to come alone. At first, I treated it as a mini vacation. I had hoped it would only last a week, but the process was more involved than I thought. I had a realtor taking care of most things, but after a month, I'm still here. I noticed things going wrong right away. Stuff was never where I last placed it. I'd see shadows out of the corner of my eye. I'd lose track of time constantly. I thought it was caused by stress, loneliness. Except for the few times the realtor came by with prospective buyers, the house was the quietest place I had ever been in. Before I completely lost my mind, the neighbor came by with a dog. She was an elderly woman who explained that she had been dog sitting while my uncle was in the hospital. Now that I was here, she thought I should take Buster, the golden retriever. I thought the neighbor might have been forgetful because she seemed to think my uncle had just passed last week. Either way, I fell in love with Buster, and his presence was exactly what I needed. I even thought it would be a tremendous present to bring home to my girls. I just hoped my wife would feel the same way. However, even the dog could tell something was wrong with the house. Buster accepted his new living arrangements pretty quickly, but would never willingly go upstairs. This was all right with me at the time. I thought it would make it easier to keep track of him. Then Buster disappeared. Literally, 1 second he was standing right behind me as I was opening the treat jar to give him a snack. My eyes left him for just a moment to put the jar back, and then he was gone. I ran through the whole house, calling his name. The kitchen was connected to the living room, and on the other end of that was the master bedroom and study. The other end of the kitchen led to a dining room, which was connected to the entrance hall that also led into the living room and stairs to the second floor. After walking upstairs, you had a choice of right or left along a balcony that overlooked the living room on one side and entrance on the other. Going left led immediately to a guest room and game room. Going right led to 2 more guest rooms and a bathroom at the end of the hall. I looked in every room and had to accept that somehow the dog made it outside, even though there was no doggy door and every door and window had been closed and locked. So I searched the surrounding neighborhood for another hour before giving up. I was thinking about making flyers when I opened the front door and heard Buster scrambling towards me from the kitchen. I was ecstatic, of course, but I just couldn't wrap my head around how I could have missed him. I let Buster sleep in the bed with me that night. In hindsight, it was a huge mistake, but it made me feel better at the time. Things picked up at work though, and I soon forgot about all the strangeness surrounding this house. Clients called me constantly, but we were getting a lot done and I landed multiple large contracts in a row. I was working around the clock, but I knew I'd be due a promotion once I returned to the home office. Several times, I'd get lost in a phone call or spreadsheet and suddenly find that it was nighttime. I'd be so absorbed with work that I would block out Buster whining for food or to go outside. I started to set alarms to keep track, but I had too many important clients to slow down. I was on top of the world, but my health was starting to suffer. I'd forget to eat and even sleep sometimes. There was always something else to do or someone to talk to. I even got better at taking care of Buster, better than I was taking care of myself at least. Then my good mood ended with a bang. Literally. Buster was whining behind me as I finished another spreadsheet. Then we both heard a door slam upstairs. For the first time since I brought him inside, Buster ran upstairs by himself. I almost called the cops, but I felt silly with the phone in my hand. I started to doubt I had heard anything at all. And if there were an intruder, surely Buster would have been making more noise, so I mustered all the courage I could manage and crept upstairs with frying pan as my weapon. It was dark upstairs, but enough moonlight was coming in from the downstairs windows for me to make out Buster standing in front of the bathroom. I had purposely closed every door when I last came through here looking for the lost dog, but this door was now wide open. I flipped on the hallway light, but nothing happened. With no better ideas, I raised my frying pan high and walked slowly to the bathroom. There was no window in here, so it was pure darkness inside. I was terrified. Bizarrely, Buster just looked frozen. His tail stood straight up, and he just stood there pointed towards the door. I tried to take it as a good sign that he still wasn't barking. That's what finally got me through the threshold and into the bathroom. The whole time, my eyes had been getting used to the darkness, and the bathroom was too small for there to have been anyone there without me noticing. I started to relax when I took a step forward into something sticky. I suddenly realized that I had my cell phone in my pocket. I pulled it out and turned it on to cast some light on the floor. I immediately dropped it at the sight of the bright red liquid that surrounded my feet. I fled the upstairs and this triggered Buster to follow. This time I had no trouble calling the police. Thankfully, there was already a patrol car nearby, so 2 officers arrived within a couple of minutes. Their powerful flashlights cut through the darkness like knives, but they soon found nothing was wrong with the upstairs lights. Something did appear to be wrong with my pipes, though, as they called out from above that the puddle was just rusty water. Because of their insistence, I climbed up the stairs again and clearly saw a muddy brown puddle in the bathroom. The banging must have been from a pipe breaking. Both cops had a laugh at my expense, but were otherwise understanding. They even gave me a number of good plumber, though my cell phone was ruined after I dropped and left it in the puddle. I would have to use the one landline in the kitchen from now on. I let them out and promised to call the plumber first thing in the morning. Yet, as exhausted as I was, I couldn't go to sleep over that excitement, so I stayed up to draft some more important documents for my company. Before I knew it, Buster had made another mess in the living room. I was dead tired and said some things to Buster that maybe I shouldn't have, and I did some things to him that I know I really shouldn't have. I decided to do something about the stress I'd been under, and I spoke to my supervisor that same morning. To my surprise, they were happy to let me have the week off as a sort of mental vacation. Just like that, all my outstanding work was taken away. With nothing else to do, I tried to focus on Buster. I played games with him and fed him a bunch of treats to make up for my earlier neglect. Then I found the first message. I didn't notice it for some time since I had been avoiding the second floor, but I realized that I hadn't actually called the plumber. Before doing so, I went upstairs to see if things had gotten any worse. Instead, I immediately saw a message written in red on the hallway wall. It read, "Losing your mind?" For a second, I kinda did. I was scared to death at the thought that someone had to have sneaked into my house while I was there, probably when I was sleeping. I won't bear repeating everything I said or did right after. Let's just say I hadn't become any braver since the banging. Eventually, I unlocked my bedroom door and made my way to the kitchen with Buster leading the way. I called the police again. Those same 2 officers were able to show up, and then, slowly, we cleared every inch of the house. Yet, we found no one. Everything was locked. No sign of forced entry. The police actually took me seriously, something that bewildered me at the time, and admitted that this isn't the first house in this neighborhood to experience this. There had been a series of break-ins where nothing was stolen, but the police officers still offered to have a car sit outside for the night. Even though I took them up on this, I soon realized that I'd never get to sleep tonight in this house. So I called my only friend in town, and really in the whole state, an old college roommate who coincidentally lived 30 minutes away. He offered to pick me and Buster up in a few hours, so I busied myself with packing up my suitcase. I didn't know how long I would need, so I pretty much packed everything I had brought with me to the house in the first place. I left my room to pick up some doggy toys when my friend called to say he was waiting outside. I decided to hang up the phone and meet him immediately. I needed the human company and he could help me move my stuff. But the driveway was empty. There was no friend, no car. I called him back immediately and he insisted he was outside. I listened to him get out of his car and walk up to the front door. He knocked and I could hear the door open and an elderly woman greet him. My friend asked for my name and mentioned my uncle. The woman said she had never heard of either of us. After thanking her, my friend left and asked me if I had gotten all that. I told him I must have given him the wrong address. He rattled off the correct one and confirmed he was there. After asking him to wait, and I left the house again. I walked out to the street and looked back at the numbers written on the curb and on the mailbox. Only there weren't any numbers, just a message, losing your mind. On the curb, written in red. The temptation to leave right away was great. I could just start walking and never stop. But I had to get my stuff and, more importantly, Buster. So I entered the house one last time. When I came back to the room, my suitcase was empty. Everything I had just spent the last hour packing up was back in its proper place. Despite how impossible this was, I focused on only one goal. We needed to leave. I put a leash on Buster and was shocked to see how haggard he was. I resolved to make it up to him when this was all over. I tried to leave out the front door like nothing was wrong, but I couldn't open it. The knob turned freely, but the deadbolt wouldn't slide back. I was really scared now, but Buster's presence helped. I knelt down to give him a hug, and he gave me an idea while licking my face. Whatever was happening, it sure wasn't the result of a maniac hiding in my house. Still, I didn't know what forces were actually opposing me, so I walked to the backyard and said loudly, "Well, Buster, time for a little walk." The glass door slid open easily. Buster bounded out happily. I guess it had been a long time since I let him outside. I followed more tentatively, and for the first time, examined the backyard closely. There was an iron fence surrounding the yard with another space between the bars that Buster could slip through. And then I saw it. A tree that grew too close to the fence and had several branches extending through and above it. I assumed the gate would be supernaturally locked too, so this was my exit. Buster didn't need any prodding. He waited patiently for me on the other side as I painfully pulled myself up and over the fence. I was suddenly aware of how weak and tired my recent lifestyle had made me. When I was in the process of climbing down the tree, on the other side, Buster growled once and then took off like a shot towards a nearby hill. I jumped down and gave chase. He disappeared over the top, and I scrambled to keep up on the surprisingly steep surface. Luckily, I found where someone had laid some stone bricks into the side for an easier way up. It was still steep enough that I had to focus on placing my feet correctly to keep from sliding, so I was looking down when my next reach up resulted in my hand grabbing carpet. Confused, I looked up to see the second floor landing. I looked down to see the rest of the stairs that led to the entrance hall and living room of the house. Buster was nowhere to be found. Demoralized and dead tired, I crawled the final steps and just sat on the landing for a while, occasionally calling for Buster. Eventually, the kitchen phone rang. Whatever ghosts were messing with me, I realized they couldn't stop outside forces from helping. I tumbled down the stairs in my haste and landed hard on the cold tiles below. But I was only dazed for a second, and soon was in the kitchen with the phone in my hand. My wife's warm voice filled me with hope. She was concerned that she hadn't heard from me in a while. I couldn't recall the last time I'd even tried. She was trying to tell me that my work hadn't heard from me in a week, while I tried to tell her to call the police. Her words gave me pause, though. I asked, "What do you mean? I was given the week off." "Dear, I thought you were supposed to continue working as soon as you got there." Yeah, but they gave me a week off because of all the stress I've been under." "Wait a second. How long have I been out here?" "Honey, you've been gone almost 9 days now." My stomach sunk, but I didn't hesitate to say, "Listen, you need to call the cops. Something is wrong. I think I'm having a medical emergency." I had just been trying to come up with an excuse to limit the amount of follow-up questions, but I ended up realizing that this was actually the most likely explanation. Maybe I was just suffering from a gas leak or brain tumor. Ironically, Either of those options seemed preferable than living in a haunted house. My wife asked, "Baby, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I thought I saw a shadow move out of the corner of my eye as I answered, "Yes, I'm okay, but no, I need help. There's something wrong about this house." "You aren't making any sense." "Just listen to me. Call the police and tell them my uncle's name. Tell them to come to this house and an ambulance might be needed. Please help me." "Please help you." "Pretty please, with a cherry on top?" And I stared at the phone in my hand as my wife's voice continued to come out of it. It sounded like her, but in a mocking tone I've never actually heard from her before. She said, "Does your tummy hurt? When's the last time you ate? I wonder what Buster tastes like." I slammed the phone down, but whatever it was on the other side was right. My stomach was hurting. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten. On cue, I heard Buster whining from upstairs. Only after I started running towards the stairs did I notice just how bruised and sore my legs were from my spill down those steps. I pushed through the pain and climbed the stairs yet again. Buster was back in front of the bathroom, lying on his side and looking thinner than I had ever seen him. "Losing your mind?" was written all over the hallway now, including on the ceiling and floor. I no longer had any doubt the messages were written in blood. Some of them were still dripping. I walked over and picked up Buster, while a banging started at my front door. I would have jumped if Buster hadn't been weighing me down. I heard the front door open, and whoever it was identified themselves as the police. I even recognized the voice as belonging to one of the officers who had visited previously. Why can't I remember his name? After calling out that I was upstairs, I turned with Buster and found the hallway stretched before me, many times its original length. Despite how thin he looked, Buster felt heavier than ever. I knew this was all just some sort of trick to not get me in touch with the police officer. I thought I must have really been talking to my wife. She had to have come through with calling the police, and the ghosts just distorted the end of the call. So I started my trek back to the stairs and shuffled my feet as fast as I could, yelling all the way. But then a voice answered the police officer. A woman's voice, my wife's voice. I could hear her say, "I'm sorry, my husband wasn't feeling well. He's resting in the bedroom. Can I help you?" I screamed as loud as I could just to get attention, but it was no use. I heard the officer say, "I'd like to check up on him all the same." Sure, come in. He's right through here." It was right out of a nightmare. I was sweating profusely while every step seemed to get me nowhere. I tried to speed up, but the hallway just stretched further. And then I heard a man's blood-curdling scream from downstairs. Suddenly, the hallway snapped back, and I found myself somehow right at the top of the stairs. My momentum couldn't be stopped. I fell down the stairs and landed hard on top of Buster. He howled in pain, but at least he was alive. I saw a long, thick trail of blood go around the corner and under my closed bedroom door. There was still a shadow of something under the door. I painfully crept to the kitchen and grabbed my trusty frying pan before making my way back to the bedroom door as quietly as I could. My eyes watched the moving shadows nervously. Whatever was waiting there had killed a man. That meant it could kill me. But if it could have a physical impact, then surely it had to be susceptible to a physical impact too. So I raised the frying pan and slowly started to turn the handle. Before I made much progress, the door flew open on its own and something turned suddenly to me. I swung my frying pan down. The cop stood before me, a smile frozen on his face. We both looked down at the knife plunged into his chest. My hand was still wrapped around the handle. He fell to the side and I fell backwards to sit heavily on the now clean floor. I was positive I had picked up the frying pan. I could remember its weight, but now I also remembered going to the kitchen and pulling out the knife. I seriously wondered if I was losing my mind. I looked down to find I had the knife in my hands again. I dropped it at once and crawled back to check on Buster. He wasn't moving. I put my head on his flank and was devastated to feel he was still warm, but not breathing. I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I did nothing for a long time. I was lethargic, but somehow made it to the couch in the living room. I waited there until nightfall and then slept on the couch. When I woke up, I waited some more. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, but nothing horrible was happening to me while I waited. I wasn't in a hurry to change that. But the bodies of Buster and the cop were still there. I needed to do something. My stomach rumbled as I finally got off the couch. That was another problem with just staying put. First things first, I found a shovel in an outdoor closet attached to the backyard porch. Digging the hole was exhausting, so I settled for just burying Buster now. I planned on getting to the cop after finding something to eat. I picked up Buster and carried him outside. His fur was still so warm. It was hard to believe he was gone, but there was no life behind his big brown eyes. I gently laid him down in the hole and got to work. Sometime later, I wandered into the kitchen and raided the pantry. The house was quiet, apart from my efforts. Whenever I stopped moving, the silence was complete. I wondered if the ghosts had just been trying to make me a murderer after all. Now that their goal had been met, maybe they would leave me alone for a while. Just in time, because I was starving and didn't need any more distractions, I opened a box of cereal and had a handful up to my lips when I paused. How could I tell I was actually eating what I was looking at? What if I had actually been opening a box of rat poison? I still wasn't sure what these ghosts were capable of. I imagined the food turning into worms after it was already in my mouth. With that thought, I threw the cereal to the ground and stomped off, no longer hungry. I needed to concentrate my efforts on leaving this place. Right on cue, I walked by the front door. It was wide open. Instinctively, I made a leap for it before stopping, with my outstretched hand just a foot short of the door. This had to be another trick. I could see the door slamming shut in my face, or even taking a few of my fingers with it. I could feel a breeze enter the house, but I was too scared to move. This was the most impossible situation I'd ever been in or even heard of. All of my senses had failed me before. However, my need for freedom eventually caused my feet to move. Upon slowly exiting the house, I saw the cop car just sitting in my driveway. The door was unlocked and the keys were sitting in the front seat. My mind went wild trying to explain the situation. Maybe the cop was secretly a murderer and had killed previous owners of this house. Maybe his sacrifice helped them move on. I couldn't think of any other explanation for my good luck at the time, so I just pushed my misgivings down and got in. I drove out of the neighborhood without incident, but I had new problems. I was in an unfamiliar city, driving a cop car, with no money or other belongings on me, and I had no idea what to do next. So I kept driving. It felt good to be free of that house. It felt good to see the sun, so I kept driving, on and on. Left turn, right turn, left turn, right turn. No idea where I'm going. And then I realized I hadn't seen any other cars on the road for some time. Where was everyone? Where was I? The sinking feeling happened again, in the pit of my stomach, but also around my whole body. I sunk back into the car seat and then realized I was sitting in an armchair, in the living room of my uncle's house. My arms were up like I was still holding onto a steering wheel. I started to cry with frustration as I stood up and screamed. How long had I been sitting there with a stupid grin, moving my arms up and down like a madman? I turned around and saw my work laptop on the dining room table. It was on and glowing at me. I walked over to it and saw that something was already written down in this post. It read, "Lost your mind? Good. Now you won't mind losing the rest." Suddenly my fist felt weighed down. I raised it to find another kitchen knife in my hand. I dropped it immediately. I erased the message and started to type out a request for help. I ignored the screen and just focused on the keys, but I kept hitting them wrong, and another message slowly formed. "I'm sorry. I've disappointed you all. For the last time, goodbye." I could have screamed again, but I noticed something had changed. I wasn't in the dining room anymore. I was in the study. I kept writing and writing and writing, and my own words started to come out. I have sent out emails requesting help. I've posted on the local police department's Facebook for assistance, and I've just tried to keep writing no matter what. This is my latest attempt to keep my sanity. Whenever I've tried to take a break, I find myself in a new room with new horrors descending on me. Once I opened the study door out to a hellish landscape and almost stepped out onto lava. I wasn't sure if it was all an illusion, but I didn't even want to have a vision of my feet burning, so I just closed the door and resumed writing. I'm not even sure this is all because of ghosts. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and the truth is simply that I have no idea what's going on. As I've gone over these crazy events, I've realized that I can't recall my uncle's name, or what he looked like. I'm not sure I ever had an uncle. I'm trying to think really hard about how I came here. Did I fly? Drive? I can't remember. Have I always been here? Even weirder, I can't remember my realtor's name or even what gender they are. I've met them in person several times. Why don't I know things I should? I can't even remember the name of my daughters or my wife. Am I even a father? Am I even a person? I know I must be because here I am writing in this small study. But now that I think about it, I can't remember who my parents are, what they look like, or anything about my childhood. Now, I just remember this house and all the nightmares, waking and otherwise, I've experienced here. I'm feeling a lot like I was back in the cop car. I found a way forward, but I really don't know what to do next. This is not a way to live, and I'm getting more and more tired. I'm so hungry, and I'm finding it harder to focus. I keep hearing voices and they're getting louder. I know if I stop writing, I won't last long, but I'm running out of things to say. My hands are tired. I'm tired, so tired died. A, B, C, D, F, G, L, Nop, Christu, Vaxes. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dogs. I need to keep writing, but I don't know what to say anymore. What's my name? I don't know. I'll die if I stop writing. I'll die if I stop working. Absurgical Monok Pristavixens. You quick brown faix gumped over the lazy dogs. Dogs, Buster. I miss Buster. I wish I could pet him one last time. But was he ever real? Is anything? I'm so tired, so hungry. I need to focus. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy goodbye. The quick brown I'm sorry jumped over pointed you lazy dogs goodbye. I'm quick. I've jumped disap the all last time lazy dogs. I'm sorry. Jumped over disappointed you lazy. For the lazy dogs, goodbye. I'm sorry, I've disappointed you all. For the last time, goodbye. My best friend is a cannibal. I met Anthony when I was in the 2nd grade. We were assigned to the same tables together and we instantly hit it off. We had so much in common with each other. We both loved Legos, drawing, video games. The list could go on and on. We would hang out almost every day after school. He would come over and we would play video games for hours. And when we were done, we would play Legos. As we got older, Anthony became like a protector for me. I was a skinny kid who would get picked on all the time by the older kids, but Anthony would always come to my rescue and scare them off with his size. Anthony was a huge kid. By the time we got to middle school, he was 6'4" and weighed over 200 pounds. No one would mess with Anthony, and they knew he was my best friend, so they wouldn't dare mess with me either. Even though Anthony seemed intimidating, he really was a nice guy. Anthony never liked how big he was because he always felt out of place around school and at home. Anthony's parents were not tall in the slightest. His mom was 5'2" and his dad was 5'8". His mom was especially nice to me. She would always bake me cookies when I came over to their house, while Anthony's dad was a whole other story. He scared me. He may not have been super tall, but he made that up with his size. He was a big guy with huge shoulders and big arms. He never talked to me much, but when he did, he spoke in this low, rough voice that sounded that he had just woken up. One thing I picked up quickly on Anthony was he never ate meat. The first time he came over for dinner, we had steak, which he refused to eat. I don't like meat. Can I just have the salad and potatoes? I thought it was odd at first, but that was because I didn't know about vegetarians and vegans. When I went to his house, though, his freezer had a bunch of meat, chicken, turkey, pork, etc. I asked him about it when we were playing on his computer in his room. He was quiet at first, then said, "All that meat in the freezer is for my parents. They love it unlike me." When we got older, I asked him if he was a vegetarian and his answer was a bit odd. Yeah, something like that. What else could he be? I thought. My thoughts on this, though, died out as we got older. When we got into high school, I started to notice changes with Anthony. He got into lots of fights and suspensions. The older kids picked on him a lot. and when he tried to fight back, they would gang up on him and beat him to a bloody pulp. He would frequently have black eyes when I came over, and I would always ask why he felt he needed to fight. He never gave an answer, though. He would always try to talk about something else, if I asked. At this point, I was getting bullied a lot too, but unlike Anthony, I didn't care what they said. I would just ignore them, and they would eventually leave me alone. Another important detail I picked up on early was his basement. I went in only once, and it just seemed off. It was huge for a basement, a big open area, with only a couple fridges full of more meat and some ice. Most of the time the basement was locked. Seemed odd, but I didn't care for it after a while. One day, though, one of the guys who usually beat up and picked on Anthony disappeared from school. His name was Tommy, and he was kind of the ringleader to the group that would beat up Anthony regularly. At first, no one paid attention when he wasn't at school for a couple days, but then the days turned to weeks, and the weeks turned to months. Missing posters of Tommy started to show up around the school, and rumors started to spread. People believed Anthony had something to do with the kidnapping, but I didn't believe any of those rumors. I knew my best friend would never do anything truly bad to Tommy. He isn't like that. He wouldn't, would he? I did start to have my doubts, but when I asked Anthony, he swore on his mother's life he didn't do anything to him. Months and months went by with the police searching for Tommy, but they couldn't find him. Eventually, they gave up on the search. Everyone seemed to forget about Tommy, but I didn't. Anthony seemed in a better mood when they gave up the search. I started to grow suspicious. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I thought deep down that Anthony did something to Tommy. I tried talking to Anthony about Tommy, but he would get pissed every time I did, accusing me of believing the rumors at school and asking me how I couldn't believe his best friend. I stopped asking shortly after that, and I just forgot about Tommy shortly after. As time went on, high school got better for me and Anthony. Anthony started to play football, and he became really good as a linebacker. He even started to get a couple scholarships from some big colleges. I didn't do any sports, but I met a wonderful girl named Vanessa who would eventually become my wife. Vanessa was wonderful. She was an average height girl with long red hair and bright blue eyes. She was perfect for me. We both loved books, writing, and movies. I would come over a lot, and we would cuddle as we watched a romantic movie. Romance was our favorite genre in writing and movies. The only problem was that Vanessa did not like Anthony at all. When we were at her house one night in her room, I asked why she didn't like Anthony, and she said, "He's creepy, Josh. Plus, didn't he do something to a kid like a year ago at our school?" "He didn't do anything, V. He isn't like that. Sure, he may have beat him up possibly, but he wouldn't kidnap him or kill him. That's not who he is." I said, "How do you know though, Josh? He may have promised you he didn't do anything, but anyone can lie when they're desperate." I thought about this for a moment. He swore on his mother's life. That was more than a promise. I changed the subject after that, which Vanessa appreciated. After that, we watched a movie in her living room. Halfway through the movie, I looked at my watch, which read 9:34 p.m. Shit, Mom said, "Be back by 9:30. I got up from Vanessa's couch and kissed her goodbye. "We'll finish the movie later," I said. She kissed her hand and blew it at me, saying, "Okay, love you, babe." I ran out as I looked down at my phone to see my mom calling. "Where are you? It's 9:34 and I told you to be back by 9:30. "Sorry, Mom. I just lost track of time," I said. My mom wasn't one of those strict parents who got on kids who weren't home right on the dot. So she said, "Okay, honey, drive safe. I'll see you at home. I love you." "Love you too," I said. As I drove home, Vanessa's words were echoing in my mind. He may have promised you he didn't do anything, but anyone can lie when they're desperate. Maybe she's right. Maybe he did lie to me. I thought, wait, no, this is Anthony. We're talking about your best friend since second grade. The memory of what Anthony said to me when I asked about Tommy came back out of nowhere. "Bro, why wouldn't you trust your best friend? I'm not lying to you. I didn't do shit to Tommy. I swear, dude, on my mom's life. You have to believe me. Who should I trust? My girlfriend or my best friend?" I started to get a headache thinking about this as I pulled into my driveway. I unlocked my front door and saw my mom sitting on the counter drinking some water, looked up as I walked in and said, "Hey, Josh, how was your time at Vanessa's?" It was good. We started the third 50 Shades of Grey movie. We didn't finish it, but we will probably tomorrow, I said. Oh, how fun, she said as she hugged me. My parents were divorced, and I lived with my mom. They didn't divorce because of cheating or anything bad. They just decided they were better off as friends. I would go over to my dad's place about 3 times a week usually. He lived pretty close to where we lived, so going back and forth from my parents' houses was pretty easy. Are you hungry at all? My mom asked. No, I'm good. Hey, Mom? I asked. Yes, sweetie, she asked. I've never asked in a while, but what do you think about Anthony? She looked at me, then thought for a moment before saying, well, I think he's a good kid. He's been your best friend for a long time, and he's been almost like your personal bodyguard, she said with a laugh. I laughed, then said, yeah, I was just wondering because you remember that kid that went missing about a year ago at our school? How could I forget? I was getting so many messages about it from my friends, she said. Well, remember how I also told you the kid who went missing was bullying Anthony? I asked. Yes. What are you getting at, Josh? She said. Do you think Anthony did anything to him, or did something with him? My mom was quiet now. She looked down at the floor, then up at me as she said, I don't think that Anthony would do something like that. Why do you think he would? She asked. I don't know. It's just when the police were searching and the kids were making rumors he was so nervous, he quivered when he spoke, and he never could look me in the eye. When the police finally gave up on their search, he just went back to normal again. I said, well, maybe he was nervous that the police would hear the rumors and they would ask him questions and maybe arrest him. There are a lot of reasons to be nervous. Josh, the police especially make people nervous. I thought about this for a moment. Maybe she's right. Anthony was just scared that the police might arrest him. That's reasonable. Okay, thanks for listening, Mom, I said, heading up to bed. Oh, of course, sweetie. I love you, she said. I love you too. The next day at school, I texted Anthony and asked if he wanted to meet up at lunch. He agreed, and after sitting down, we talked about football, school, girls, the normal stuff. It felt like old times again, and I didn't realize how much I actually missed really talking with him. Hey, bro, I've missed hanging out with you. Feels like we never do anymore, Anthony said. Yeah, I know. We should definitely hang out sometime, I said. How about tonight, if you don't have anything to do, he said. Yeah, I'd love to, dude, I said. The bell ringed, and before we took off to our classes, he said as he gave me a fist bump, Sick man, come over to my house around 4. Sounds awesome. See you then, I said, waving before heading off to my next class. I met up with Vanessa after school, as I usually did to walk her home. On the walk, she asked if I wanted to come over tonight to finish the movie. Sorry, babe, not tonight. I'm hanging out with Anthony, I said. She looked at me with an annoyed and worried expression on her face. She said, Babe, you know, I don't like you hanging around him. He could be dangerous, and I just don't get a good vibe from him. I started to get a little annoyed as I said, V, he's my best friend. I know deep down he's a good person. He's protected me and been by my side almost my whole life. I'm not going to stop hanging out with him just because of some stupid rumors that were made up about him almost a year ago. She was quiet the rest of the walk. She didn't even say a goodbye or I love you at her house. She just walked inside, slamming the door behind her. I sighed as I started to head home. I looked at the time on my phone, which read 3:34 p.m. Might as well head to Anthony's now, I thought. Anthony only lived a couple minutes away from me on the other street, so I walked back to my house and ate something quickly before I told my mom I was heading over to Anthony. Okay, Josh, have fun. Be back by at least 9:30 this time, okay? She said. Yeah, I won't forget, I said, giving her a hug before I left. After a couple minutes of walking, I turned to Anthony's street and saw his house. It was the first house in the street, a simple brown 2-story house with small windows in the top and bottom of the house. I walked up to the door and checked my phone before ringing the doorbell. 3:48. A little early, but I'm sure he won't mind. I rang the doorbell, and not even a minute later, Anthony opened the door, smiling. Hey man, come inside, he said. I walked in, and the house looked the same as it always had. Same red couch in their living room. Same brown dinner table, the same big portrait of Anthony's family. Everything was the same. I saw Anthony's mom, who came and gave me a hug and said, "Feels like it's been a while, Josh. How have you been?" "I've been good, Mrs. Johnson," I said. I saw Anthony's dad watching football on the couch, and as he saw me, he gave me a single nod. I nodded back to him as me and Anthony ran upstairs. We went into his room, which had been redecorated a bit since the last time I saw it. There were a bunch of football posters of players and teams now hanging around his wall. He told me, as I looked around at his posters, that his favorite team was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and as I kept looking, I noticed there were lots of Buccaneer players wearing their red and black jerseys. We decided to fire up the PlayStation and play some Madden, since that was his favorite game. I didn't enjoy playing it that much, but Anthony was having a blast, so I kept playing for him. We played for a good hour before we decided to switch to Call of Duty. We played for hours, talking and laughing, as we talked about old memories, but we eventually got quiet because we started to get competitive as we kept playing. After a while, I checked the time, which read 9 p.m. Damn, almost time to go. After the last game, I got thirsty and told Anthony I was going to head down and get a drink of water. He didn't even look up as he was locked into the new game he started without me. "Okay, be quick, I want to destroy you again like I did in the last match," he said. "You wish," I said with a chuckle as I headed downstairs. I walked down the stairs fast but quiet since Anthony's parents were in bed now. Once downstairs, I located the cabinet with the cups in the dark and grabbed some water from the fridge. As I was drinking my water, I started to notice something. A smell started to fill my nose that worsened quickly. It smelled nauseating and sweet, like burning leather almost. When the smell worsened, I picked up something with the smell. It smelled like something dead. When I was walking home a week ago, I saw a dead squirrel in the middle of the street, and as I passed it, it had a strong odor, like the one I'm smelling now. I started to follow the smell now, curious as to what it was. I navigated through the dark, and once I located the smell, I froze in place. The smell was coming from the basement, and even in the dark, I could see the door was slightly open. I gulped and decided whether I should go in or not, but curiosity won as I descended down the stairs. I held up my phone as light as I plucked my nose walking down. The basement looked the same as usual, but as I got closer to the smell as it burned into my nose, even as I was plucking my nose, I could see there was a plastic container tucked away into the far corner near one of the fridges. I got closer and closer as the odor got stronger and stronger. Once I reached the container, I could see there was some kind of meat inside. I don't know why, but I opened the container and gasped as I fell back in horror. There were 2 human fingers sitting on top of the meat, and between the meat, I could see an eye barely visible. I almost threw up at the sight, but I somehow managed to keep it in as I started to freak out. What the hell is this? A dead human? Who? Why would Anthony have this? Then it hit me. I didn't want to believe it, but the thought creeped in. Is this Tommy? "You shouldn't be here, Josh," I heard from behind me. I spinned around to see Anthony, standing there motionless. We stood there staring at each other. Anthony didn't look angry or sad. He just had this blank look on his face. I broke the silence. "Anthony, what the hell is this?" I asked, stuttering. "Well, Josh, that's something important to me that I don't want anyone to know about," he said. I asked, stuttering even more. Is this a person?" He laughed before saying, Maybe it's someone we both knew," he said with a smile. "Dude, you're scaring me. Just tell me what that is," I say in a panicked voice. He was silent for a moment before he said, "Might as well tell you the truth. You won't live to tell it," he said as he pulled out a knife from his pocket. "Isn't it to—" I backed up to the corner as he continued. "When Tommy was walking home from school that day, I knew what I had to do. I did it for the both of us. Josh, you gotta understand that. I grabbed him and knocked him out and brought him here. I'm surprised no one was around to see it. Oh God, the feeling of stabbing Tommy, piercing the knife into him as he screamed, it was the best thing I've ever felt." He was now getting close to the corner where I was, unable to move or go anywhere, as I knew he would catch me. I didn't tell you something, Josh. Before we met, there was this day when my mom burnt her hand on the stove and a little bit of skin fell off. I was young and curious, and while Mom was in the bathroom cleaning the wound, I ate the skin. It tasted so good, like bacon, but much, much better, he said, with his grin becoming wider. When I finished killing Tommy, I got so hungry and he just looked so good. I had tried for too long to resist my urges, and as I took a bite of his finger, I knew I would never be able to stop. So I've stashed his body here, preserving it and eating it when hungry. You know I can't eat normal meat, Josh. He was now a couple feet away from me, his grip on the knife becoming tighter as he was upon me. I somehow asked in my panicked state, "Do your parents know?" Of course, they've known about my urges since I ate my mother's skin. They know I need the food. I crave it almost every day, he said. He was right in front of me now. I was shaking as he pressed the knife against my throat. Why did you have to come down here, bro? I don't want to have to kill you, he said. I won't, please, Anthony, I won't tell, I begged. He chuckled, then said, "As much as I would like to believe that, we both know you won't," he said as the knife pressed closer and closer against me. "I can't have you ruining my scholarships now, can I?" he said, then continued, "Don't worry, Josh, we'll still be together forever. I'm sure you'll taste really nice," he said, licking his tongue. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't fight him because he was much stronger than me, so I did the only thing I could think of. I swung my phone at him as hard as I could and connected near his mouth. He fell back and screamed in pain as I saw blood coming out from his mouth. I took the opportunity I had and ran towards the basement stairs. Before I got there, Anthony grabbed my leg and tried to drag me down with him. In one quick motion, I turned around and kicked him as hard as I could in the nose and ran. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could and out the door and out of the house, never looking back. I ran all the way home and slammed the door once I got inside. I heard my mom's voice from behind me before I even turned around. "Young man, where have you been? I've been trying to call you and you never answer. I was just about to call the police before you came." I broke down and started crying. My mom, noticing this, came and hugged me as I sobbed and told her what happened. After I told my mom everything, she asked if I had called the police. Stupid, why didn't I do that? I thought. My mom called the police and told them what happened. Shortly after, we heard a knock at the door and saw 2 cops outside. The first cop was a male with a short goatee and brown hair, and the second one was a female with short blonde hair. They told us they arrested Anthony after they found him in the basement, still laying on the ground, knocked out. They found the container and found everything my mom told the cops I'd found. They said they would determine who it was the next day, but I think they knew who it was already. Anthony's parents were also arrested as well. Since my mom told them their involvement in the murder, the cops said they didn't even put up a fight. Just put out their hands without even saying anything. Gave up as soon as they saw us come in, the male officer said. After the cops gave us some other details such as the trial date and charges, they left. I went to bed right after, hoping to forget about the nightmare I had just experienced. The DNA test came in the next day, and the body was confirmed to be Tommy. Everyone was talking about what happened at school. People were pointing their fingers at me and whispering as I walked down the hall. Vanessa came running to me as I was heading to my first class and gave me a tight hug. I could see she had tears in her eyes. "Are you okay? I thought something had happened to you. You never answered any of my texts or calls." I didn't say anything. I was too tired from the night before to talk or argue. The rest of the day was how I would expect it, everyone talking about Anthony and asking me if I was okay. A week later, Anthony's trial was set. They asked me to come in as a witness, but I declined. I didn't want to see that monster ever again, even without me as a witness. Anthony pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Anthony's parents pleaded guilty to involvement in the murder and were sentenced to 30 years in prison. After I graduated high school, I left my town and went to college at the University of Washington. Vanessa came to college with me and we bought an apartment. Shortly after, we decided to get married. In college, me and Vanessa majored in journalism. After graduating, we got jobs working for Washington Post as reporters, where we still continued writing stories, and eventually we published a book on the short stories we made. 10 years later, and I was the editor for the Washington Post, and Vanessa was the executive editor. We also had 2 kids, Charlie and Richard. Charlie was a lot like me and Vanessa, smart, intelligent, and very quiet. Richard was smart too, but he loved to talk and was a very social kid. He wants to play football and other sports, while Charlie just likes to draw and read. Life was good for us. We lived in a good neighborhood and had good jobs and a great house. As I was heading out the door drinking my coffee, I caught something on the news. Asterisk, breaking news, as killer and cannibal, Anthony Johnson has escaped from prison. Police say Johnson escaped from breaking a vent in his cell and using the sewer system as an escape route. Police also say an escape took Johnson a long time to plan and execute based on the dents and bruises on the vent. The killer is notorious for his murder of Tommy. I turned off the TV quickly. The memories all came back to me. I started to sweat as Vanessa came downstairs. "Josh, you okay?" she asked. I couldn't move, talk, or think. The monster who caused me years of restless nights. The monster who I once considered my best friend. The monster who tried to kill me has escaped prison. Suddenly, I felt a vibration from my phone. I opened it and saw an unknown number calling. I answered in a shaky voice. "Hello?" A voice came on the other end, one I had prayed I would never hear for the rest of my life. "Hey Josh, been a while.